Kid Green, the whole deal is that people will manifest whatever. If you're into religion, you're going to manifest a religious angel type thing. If you're into fear, you're going to do a gray, that kind of thing. That's where I'm sort of headed with what I think is going on. People want to separate them. People always like.
What do you think of Craig? You know, Mr. Campobasso. What do you think?
I don't know too much about him. I just know that he sort of popped on the scene there, and he has. You know, he's pretty active. He's got, you know, the connections in Hollywood and stuff. And I've never really dealt with him. I've never interviewed him or anything like that. So.
Okay. All right. Just wondering. Okay.
Yeah. For those that want to chit chat, get on to the line earlier than 2 minutes before we start. So,
I'm guilty. Sorry.
This is directed at you, Mr. Ross.
Yes, I take a full accountability and responsibility for any deliverable I ever have delivered or will deliver. So
well, yeah, we can always have another meeting where we host it like we used to do the experiencer thing, where everybody gets on and just you can chit chat for 3 or 4 hours,
and we're all capable of that. And this is one big family. I feel it. So
yeah.
Anyway, if you can mute yourself there, we're going to go ahead and start. It's a couple minutes after the hour, and so there they go. Take a breath. Here we go. So good evening and welcome to April's BoulderExo presentation. I'm Paul Sperry, and on behalf of our board members, it's my pleasure to moderate tonight's presentation with the internationally acclaimed ET, UFO, UAP expert, Grant Cameron.
No, they're still talking.
The title of tonight's talk, Contact Modalities and a New View of Ultimate Reality, derives from Grant's latest paperback and Kindle book. Contact modalities are gateways to a normal world that seem real, yet are elusive and hard to explain. Examples include apparent ET contact, psychic powers, spirit contact, remote viewing, telepathy, hypnosis, meditation, psychedelics, channeling, and a host of other methods that are used to pierce the veil.
That loud enough?
Gene, you can mute yourself there. Okay, continuing. As in recent presentations, okay, and there's the phone ringing. As in recent presentations, Grant will speak for around 15 minutes, stop briefly for questions and comments, then continue. Intermediate breaks will last just a few minutes and will save longer discussions for the end.
Just let it go.
To ask a question, click the raise hand button at any time and I'll call on you during the break. Depending upon your Zoom version and computer, that button is found either under the reactions, chat, or participants options. If you need any technical assistance, send a chat message directly to Marianne. I can hear the phone ringing. Somebody's already calling saying they can't get in. So Grant is coming to us from Winnipeg, Canada, the so-called coldest major city in the world. Although he adds that with the recent warming, this is no longer the case. For all of his dynamism and eclectic vigor, Grant is self-effacing without any apparent ego. He won't tell you this, but I happen to know he has more than 400 YouTube videos, produces a daily podcast, is an invited speaker every year at conferences around the world, and can regularly be seen on TV shows, such as the acclaimed series Hangar One. Grant has published at least 11 books, but even this is a moving target that changes every few months. Grant has received the Leeds Conference International Researcher of the Year and the UFO Congress Researcher of the Year awards. He is best known for his expertise on what US presidents have known about UFO phenomena, plus apports and triangles. He has had multiple personal encounters with so-called aliens, although this may be a misnomer because we're all visitors to this 3D realm. For all of his relentless quest for what eludes most, Grant has never been arrested, he tells me, and his only known infraction was a speeding ticket when he had to get to a bathroom. I didn't pursue any details about how that must have turned out. Grant's latest passion is into the nature of reality and how does it work. As a magnet for paranormal reports, the veil has been ripped and those that are listening are being flooded. Grant is currently exploring what he calls breakthrough phenomenon, where one experiences the wider reality lying just beyond the blinders of belief systems to which most of us tenaciously cling. He is wondering if the portals are more important than the aliens that reportedly come through them. I have never known a researcher more passionate and able to speak for days on this topic. Grant would be welcome in our filibuster-leaning U.S. Senate, and yet he has the most succinct voicemail message I've ever heard. I'm quite sure Grant will use every minute we give him, but we will come to a close by 8:30 Mountain Time. Ideas will be coming faster than most of you can assimilate. So fasten your seatbelts and remember the highlights that pertain to you. Grant is in great demand and did an interview just this afternoon, so we are quite fortunate to have him with us tonight. He is a methodical researcher who does his homework, so you can bank on what he will tell you. Committed to truth and a genuine friend, it is really my pleasure to again welcome Grant Cameron to BoulderExo.
Wow, that was quite something.
How you like that, man?
That was something. That's I've had some breakthrough experiences, and they call me Ego Boy. And now I'm going to have to go back there and take it again. I'm honored to be. I've always called Boulder, Colorado, Consciousness, Colorado. It's a very inspired place, and I'm honored to come. I'm kind of sorry that I'm back so many times. It's almost like you guys can't find any speakers, so you keep calling me back. But the presentation I'm going to do today, as I mentioned to Paul last night, the stuff is happening so fast that it's like a floodgate of stuff that's occurring. I'm going to do Contact Modalities, which is a book that I put out. Desta Barnaby is one of my assistants. We put this book out maybe 3 months ago. It's pretty much in demand. A lot of experiencers read it because basically what it does is it goes through the idea that 39% or 40% of all experiencers who claim that they were abducted or on board the ship, and these kind of experiences will say at one point during their experience they knew the answer to everything in the universe. And so the concept behind Contact Modalities is that everything's in the field, everything is there, and it's the ability to break into the field. It's the ability to get in there, grab the material, and bring it back. And I'm going to show you some of the modalities, some really bizarre stories you may not know about how things, we sort of think that, smart guys invent stuff. I'm going to show you that's probably not very true. But this is the book that we put out. It went up to 400 pages. We actually had to cut it off. There's actually I've discovered a couple of contact modalities since this came out. And it's part of a series. So I've written a lot of books on consciousness. I had the consciousness download experience in 2012, where I sort of, as I told Jerry Pippin, the big interviewer back then, he was very upset that I'd given up the presidents to do woo-woo stuff. And I said, well, I kind of didn't intend to go there, Jerry. I kind of got teleported. And that's what you'll find if you have a UFO experience or something. So I've done a number of consciousness books. I did the Contact Modalities. I did the Tuned In book, which is from a message I got from an alien, Chris Bledsoe's Guardians. They they gave him a message to give to me, that the message is in the music. So I did that one. I did the Breakthrough book, which the second book I'm doing now is called The Super Bowl. And when I decided I was going to call it The Super Bowl, a voice came in my head and said, of course it's called The Super Bowl. What the hell else would you want to call it? And so I've got these various books that deal with consciousness. Inspired is a lot dealing with what we're going to talk about today. I wrote a book called Inspired, the Paranormal World of Creativity. And I look at Nobel Prizes. I look at all sorts of inventions, songs, art. And what you start to realize is that these people are able to get in the field, their right brain, they're able to basically shut down the rational analytical left brain, the little voice in the head, shut off the noise and pick up the signal. The word contact modalities comes from, and you see in the UFO community, you see a lot of these synchronicities, bizarre stories. When I had my experience in 2012 in Phoenix, Arizona, listening to Colin Andrews, there was two other events that happened basically at the same time. One was Chris Bledsoe has his encounter with the, what he calls the Lady in Light, where she tells him you've got a burden and it is yours to carry. And he's got this constant contact, all sorts of intelligence, military people watching him to find out how he has this contact. The other was Ray Hernandez, who started the Free Foundation with Edgar Mitchell. They looked at 3,000 experiencers and looked at the patterns in these 3,000 experiencers. He had an experience a week after my experience, so March of 2012, in which his dog gets healed. I won't get into the story, but he has this very bizarre paranormal experience. He's an atheist, and he sort of gets flipped off the train, and he doesn't know which end is up. And then he tries to, his wife's having contact with big, huge ships. Then suddenly he has a contact, he calls out, and he has a contact with these ships, and he's just blown away. And he's not sleeping. He's read, I think, 300 books in a couple of months. He's an IRS attorney in Miami, very high end, very go all the time. And he came to me to say, I'm having contact. I know there's a consciousness connection to this. And he put consciousness and UFOs, and my name, of course, popped up. So I went to Florida. I said, well, I'm coming to Florida, and this is shortly after that, 2013. I said, I'm giving a lecture on consciousness for Paula Harris in Sebring, Florida. Come to the conference. We can talk about your experience or whatever. He comes to the conference, and I do the consciousness lecture. He tells his story with his wife in the experiencer group in the morning. And 2 days later, he's on a Miami freeway, and he's blocked in traffic. He's completely stopped. He's listening to NPR radio, and he suddenly pulled out of his body and pulled up into the sky or wherever, into this matrix reality. And he's shown this wheel. And the wheel has all these different things: UFO contact, spirits, and near-death experiences, remote viewing, channeling, mystical meditation, OBEs and stuff. And in the middle is consciousness. And the beings that are showing this to him say, you got to stop parsing this. It's all the same thing. It's all linked by consciousness. And everybody wants to fight about my modality is better than your modality. And he came up with the word contact modalities. Basically what it's basically, I call it shutting down the bubble machine. We have a brain that produces an awful lot of noise, and that's created by the rational analytical left brain, the ego mind, the little voice in the head, and it's busy chattering away, and it has to keep you, collecting the toys and, the rape, pillage, kill, and steal story. And you've got to make a living, and you've got to do this, you got to do that, and we got to gather this stuff. And when that shuts down, when you can shut off the bubble machine, suddenly you pop into this world that is a completely different world. One of the misconceptions people have is that we have a brain. We don't have a brain. We definitely have two brains. Absolutely no doubt about that. You have a right brain, a left brain. The left brain is the rational analytical brain, the male brain. It believes in self. It believes in ego, me versus you, good versus bad, all that kind of stuff. And then you have the right brain, which is the female brain, which is the one that I believe links into the universe. And the other thing that is, I think, a misconception is that people believe that the brain, even if it's two brains, it's just these two brains. It's actually, according to Michael Gazzaniga, who is known as the inventor of cognitive neuroscience, says we have potentially millions of modules, independent modules in the brain. So you have a visual center, a balance center, all these different modules in the brain. They're all independent, but they all work together exactly the way you have this upper model. We are all cells in the body. We all have a job. We all are doing our thing, and all these modules work together. So when something happens, when you move your hand or something, 5 or 6 of these modules will light up. They know exactly what to do. And so we have to remember that the brain is not one brain. It's thousands of modules, or potentially millions of modules that are all working together to create consciousness. One of the things that I was told, I'm in contact modalities, I was able to learn how to get contact. That's what I wanted to do, and get into the field. So I've got a couple of techniques I use. And one of the things, I've been told a number of things. This is one of the things that I was told is, it was called the wrong block theory. And basically it said, we have a theory that we have all these blocks, and we've got all these blocks, and we've assembled all these blocks, and we got it all figured out. And all we need is one more block, and we get that one block, and we're going to figure out UFOs. We're going to figure it all out with that one block. And they basically told me, no, you've got all the wrong blocks. You're making a mistake. It's all these wrong blocks. Now here's some examples of the wrong blocks. So we've had a lot, and we've been able to replace the wrong blocks. So we have the flat Earth, and we found out, oh, that's a wrong block. Then we said, oh, the sun goes around the Earth. Oh, wrong block. We replaced that one. We were the center of the universe. So we replaced that block. We discovered that was a wrong block. We have one brain. I already mentioned that. We discovered, no, we don't. We've got more than one brain. We have all these modules inside the brain. The ego. We realized that we have the ego that has this very distinct interpreter function, where it's the skeptic. It makes up little stories to fill in holes. When you have paranormal stuff happens, this left brain interpreter will come in and it'll say, oh, they're hoaxing, they're making it up, and try to make the world consistent again. And you have these other things which I think are very important. The one I always refer people to is the whole idea of Joe Bolte Taylor. Joe Bolte Taylor is a neuroanatomist trained at Harvard University. Working at Harvard when this happened. I think it was 1986 or something like that. She's 37 years old, and she has a left brain hemorrhage. Her left brain starts to flood with blood. All the neurons start going offline, and she suddenly is one with the universe. And the left brain shuts down. The ego shuts down. She is no longer Joe Bolte Taylor. She's one with the universe. She is mostly important is she has no fear. The fear does not exist when the left brain shuts down, which indicates that fear is a creation of the ego. People will say, "I'm afraid. I'm scared," and the question is, who's scared? Is it your spirit or is it your ego? And what you find out, it's the ego. The ego is the one that curses the darkness. The ego is the one that's afraid. The ego is the one that sees a separation. I'm the good guy. You're the bad guy. Your color of skin is the wrong color. You're living in the wrong country. That's ego. And Jill Bolte Taylor, she gave a TED talk. It's this, I think, the second most popular TED talk of all times. And she corrects some of these whole things about the brain. And you got to remember, she wasn't somebody dragged off a street corner. She was a neuroanatomist. I think she's at the University of Indiana now. But that was one of the blocks we had to replace. Everything is solid. We believe that one. A lot of people still believe that. Everything is absolutely solid. And we realize it's 99.99999. By some estimates, it's 10 to the 54th power, which would mean that if you have 1 acre of matter in the entire universe, that's how much space. The rest is all space. Things have color. We know that. There are no colors. It's all a creation. Your brain is creating what you see. Everything that you experience is in your head. It's not out there. There is no out there. That was John Wheeler, the guy who came up with black hole and wormhole theory. The idea, we know this, it's still an illusion. We think that we have moving film, and it's just clips of things moving very, very quickly. This is a good one. I like this one. This was Max Planck, who started quantum physics, 1874. His professor tells him, no point in going in physics. We got it all figured out. There's nothing to do in physics. So leave it alone. Don't go in. And the eye that we see with the eyes. I'm going to show you some videos later on, which I think some of the most revolutionary stuff that there is in terms of understanding that you may not even be seeing with your eyes. Like when you have a near-death experience, your eyes are taped shut, so your cornea does not get scratched, and people will describe the doctor, exactly what the doctor was saying, where he went, where the family was, all these kind of things. So there's a lot of things, and these are wrong blocks. And so what we have to realize is that a lot of what we're doing, a lot of what we make, we think we know, is just assumptions. We've actually got a lot of things wrong. And here's the last one, and then we'll take a little break if you want. This is this idea that still was, even 100 years ago, people believed this thing where you felt the head, and this was a study of the bumps on the head that determined what your personality was, and diseases and all this kind of stuff. We've come a long way, but we've got a lot of blocks to replace. So Paul, do you want to take some questions now, or do you want me to keep going for a bit?
This is a perfect time. Let's go ahead and break for questions here or comments. So I'm looking to see if there are any hands up. If there are none, we can continue.
Tell them to unmute themselves if they have a question.
Amazing. Let's keep going. Thank you.
Okay. Here's two. These are given to me by either my brain, my subconscious, or my whatever, higher self. They keep referring me to these two quotes. One is by Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein, and this has to do with the blocks, about making assumptions and going to try to figure out what is actual reality rather than having all these assumptions and realizing you may be wrong. Albert Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem using the same information that you use to create the problem. So what we do is we have all these blocks and we're shuffling the blocks around, shuffling and shuffling, and we figure we just got them in the wrong order. We got to shuffle these blocks, and all we're doing is shuffling all the wrong blocks around. That we are not looking at anomalies, and that's why UFOs and paranormal phenomena is so important. It shows an anomaly. It means you got something wrong. If the world was the way you think it is with the blocks, the way you're shuffling them around, that wouldn't be happening. The reason it's happening is because one of your blocks is wrong. The other quote they always refer to me is this one by William James, who was the head of, started American psychology. He was the first psychology department in the United States. William James said, you believe that you're thinking, you're actually just rearranging your prejudices. And that's one of the problems we have as we make these assumptions. One of the big assumptions that I always point out in contact modalities, I have a big section on this whole thing. And this has to do with the rational analytical. We send our kids to school and we pay $50,000 to go to MIT and stuff like that. And we figured that that's making kids very smart, but it's a left brain smart. Lewis Terman ran a study called the Terman study, started to look at kids who were very, very smart in California, 1920. It's the longest longitudinal study ever done. They followed every one of these kids until they died. They started in 1920, took the 1,540 smartest kids in California. You had to have 140 IQ to get in. 25% of the kids had IQs of 180 or above. And they followed these kids, and what they found out, there was no Nobel Prizes, no high achievers, nothing. They had actually 2 Nobel Prizes. One was Alvarez, who came up with the idea of the dinosaurs being wiped out by the comet, and one other, his name escapes me, but there was 2 actual Nobel Prizes that were actually rejected by the study. They said, no, they don't fit into the study. They're not smart enough. So the idea is that we think, oh, if you're really smart, you're gonna invent stuff. And basically, it's sort of like a different type of intelligence. It's being able to memorize, it's being able to do this kind of stuff. But when you start looking at big inventions, Nobel Prizes and stuff, you see people are outside that box. It's not necessarily the smartest people that are making the big inventions or the discoveries. So Terman, they did this whole thing. And they found out all these other bizarre things about health. Those who were the most successful were ones least likely to die at any given age. In fact, those who were carefree, undependable, and unambitious in childhood and very unsuccessful in their careers had a whopping increase in their mortality risk. So they had they were looking at all these different factors with these children, but the one that stands out to me is this idea that, like Terman would say, for example, they said half the kids graduated from university, but Terman was actually signing these kids, getting them into university. But because, and I was at a university for 40 years, so I know that because somebody's got a PhD doesn't necessarily mean they know one particular area of one particular subject very, very well. But remember, I used to have the head of plant science used to argue with me, the dean of plant science used to argue with me all the time about UFOs, and he just used to annoy me because he was making all these stupid arguments or whatever. And finally I said to him, hey, you know about roses and plants, you know nothing about UFOs. And then he sort of shut up. But that's the thing, people have very sort of specialized knowledge. This has got to do with the portal stuff. This has got to do with the idea that there may actually be this idea that it may not be as extraterrestrial as we think, and the idea there's no time and space. That's one of the illusions we have is we assume there's time and space, and quantum physics is showing these may be illusions as well. So Kit Green did a study. They're doing a study on experiencers, trying to find out what's different between experiencers and the people on the street. And that's the whole idea, is if you're talking to aliens, there's something going on. It's an anomaly. Why is this person having experience? How are you talking? Is their brain different? Is their DNA different? So there's 8 people. The money's being put up by Bigelow. It's a defense contract. And they're looking at various experiences around the world, which is what you should do to try to find out what it is. They had a conversation, Kit Green, who used to run the Weird Desk of the CIA, had a conversation with Jim Peniston. And Jim Peniston said, okay, Burroughs, you got Burroughs' DNA and you got his MRI. I'm not Burroughs, I'm not going to roll over like him. Well, what are you doing? Like, what are you talking to me for? And that's when Kit Green said this thing about the fact that it was propulsion. And Peniston said, I'm not stupid. Come on, it's not propulsion. What are you talking about? It's not propulsion. And he said, well, maybe that's the wrong word. Maybe that's, and he said, we want to see how the technology enables interdimensional travel. So here you have a project that's going on right in the government now, where they're looking at this. And this is the quote from Peniston's book. The focus of what Kit Green and the people he was working with, subcontract for the government, doing work for Bigelow Aerospace with a group of 8 other scientists and medical professionals, seemed to want to obtain and develop. How does this technology enter our reality and leaves as easily as it entered? If you've seen the latest interview with Lou Elizondo, he does it for the debrief. You'll see they say, oh, okay, so it's either, is it on planet, off planet? And Elizondo says, well, hang on. Let's go down the rabbit hole. He said, it may not be either this or that. You've got to consider it maybe something else. And he's sort of hinting it's maybe not off planet. And he said, you've got to look at interdimensional, you got to look at all this different thing. And we don't really know what it is, but it's not as simple as you think it is. And that's what I'm saying. So if you get this thing about interdimensional travel and different levels of reality, then you start looking at what did we got wrong. So we have the Big Bang, I call it the dynamite theory, where we have all this matter that gets sort of blown up and thrown into outer space, and it's all matter. Well, what if there is interdimensions? What if there's all these dimensions? So what does that say for the Big Bang? How did all these different dimensions? Because the Big Bang is based on a strictly materialistic paradigm, where it's all just matter, it's all just random and stuff like that. And the whole idea of interdimensional stuff, and there's all these different levels, tends to indicate we may have that totally wrong as well, that we just made it up. And that's what Terence McKenna said. Here's what Terence McKenna said about the Big Bang. He said, what philosophers of science are saying is, give us one free miracle, and we will roll it from that point forward, from the birth of time to the crack of doom. Just give us one miracle, and then we'll all unravel according to natural law. And these bizarre equations, which nobody can understand, but which are so holy in this enterprise. Well, I say then, if science gets one free miracle, then everybody gets one free miracle. And what he was saying is that we get all the matter, we get all the matter, all the energy, all the laws of the universe. And once we get all that, you give us that one free miracle, then we will explain the rest. And Terence McKenna basically called that the limit case for credulity in the modern world. That, I mean, if you can believe that this all just happened for no reason, out of nothing, and this all came, and you get to have all these laws, then he said, I've got a book, a bridge in Brooklyn that I can sell you real cheap. And that's this whole idea that the paradigm that we're starting to see, this multidimensional thing, indicates that we've got a lot of stuff wrong, that it's not a material world the way we think it is. And Terence McKenna was, of course, famous for the DMT stuff, and he had the little beings and this is where you start to go. When you start looking at things like psychedelics, out-of-body experience, all these kind of things, what you see is there's this whole new level where you're starting to see that our reality is only one of possibly many realities. And it may be, as the mystical literature pointed out, that the mystical literature, the Eastern literature, may be right. It's all here, it's all now, there's no time, there's no space, there's no out there. It's all here, it's all one thing on top of another, all things happening at the same time, all in different levels of vibration, but it's all here. Or as John Wheeler said, there's only one electron. These bizarre ideas, there is only one electron in the universe. And this idea that we've got so much stuff wrong, and we're making these assumptions. And I've been told that sort of noetically a number of times. I was working on it, and I was actually told on 2 occasions, well, I won't say what they called me, but they said, you think you understand what's going on, you haven't got a clue. And they told me that twice. And then the third time, they made a statement. Now it's escaped my mind what they told me the third time. They said, not only is what you've got wrong, it's exactly the opposite of what you think it is. And that came from this download I had in 2017. That's where I really got interested in contact modalities, where I'm walking down the street and I get 24 things. And basically it says to me, okay, is the world made out of nuts and bolts? If it is, that's one world with certain rules and regulations. But if it's not, it's made out of consciousness, that's a completely different world. All the rules and regulations are going to change. Is it one life? If it's one life, that's one world with certain rules and regulations. But if it's multiple lives, if you live multiple times, then all the rules change. Is it random? If it's random world, then that's a universe with certain rules and regulations. But if it's pattern, that's a completely different world. They give me these 24 things, one after another. And luckily I had a piece of paper and I was quickly writing these things down as they were coming. And so that's the basic notion. We may maybe take a break here because I'm going to go to some of the things if anybody's got a quick question here.
Okay, that's great. And I want to make one response to your comment earlier that we continue to come back to you, Grant, because we can't get anybody else. After 75 talks, we have no trouble getting people that are credible. It's just that you seem to be as credible as anybody. And so we keep coming back to you because we love it. But okay, first question here. Ross has got his hand up here for 5
yes.
minutes.
A very quick question, Grant. Who are you referring to as they? Those are your friends, your
Okay.
neighbors, exactly, and what they all about?
Well, people want to put names on it. So Desta will call it higher self. People will call it aliens. People will call it God. My impression, the more I look at this, the more I see that it's not going to be as ET as we think, maybe not even ET. They refer to themselves as they, the sort of the thing. And it's like a voice in your head that comes with, it's like a noetic experience. If you know Edgar Mitchell's Noetic Institute, it's something that happens noetically. You know it's right. When it comes into your head, you go, oh, that's how it works. It's sort of that kind of thing. So I'm getting it in different ways, but I think it's all basically the same thing. It's in the field. But if you see channelers, you'll always say you can tell a channeler when they're actually talking to somebody because they'll go from I to we. So it refers to itself as we, but I just call it the force. I have no idea what it is. I just know that it seems to at times appear like at one time I asked it, "Are you God?" And it's got a one heck of a sense of humor. I mean, I talk about Terrence McKenna with all his DMT stuff. He has all these one-liners and all this stuff. I say, I know where he got it from. He did not make this stuff up. Because when you get into this noetic state where you're through daydreaming or whatever your noetic thing is, it's very funny. I remember one time I said, "Are you God?" And they said, "No, we're not God. We just hired him to run the show." And they started laughing. And that's the thing. So I'm not sure. I don't think anybody really knows who they're talking to. People will claim it's higher self, it's spirit guides. I really don't know. I just know that I am dealing with something that I can put questions to and I can get answers and they will ring as true. And I've never seen anything they gave me that turned out to be not true. Like the consciousness in 2012, nobody was working on consciousness except for Colin Andrews. And I remember it was really far out then to talk about consciousness. And I said in 2012, I could not have spelled consciousness and I couldn't have cared less. I had no interest in it either. But that has turned out to be true. The idea of consciousness, now it's a big buzzword. Everybody's talking about it. And I got it in 2012, same as this stuff in 2017. All that, nothing I've been given has turned out to be not true. So I'm not sure who it is. You'll see this in all mystical literature. Once you get something that's referring to itself as we, it gets to this idea of the one. We are the one. We are in contact. It's all the same thing. And that's the basic notion. There is no separation. There's no me, you, whatever. That is when your left brain is online. Then you believe that's me and you and separation. When you get into the field, it's all one thing. Or people who do the ayahuasca, or they'll say, I suddenly realized everything was alive, everything was conscious, and everything was connected. Like Sting, the famous musician, he said, when I looked at this little plant coming out of the ground, I said, that's my brother. And he put up millions of dollars for the rainforest. And it affects people, but it's this idea of oneness, that everything is connected, and that there's, whenever you're dealing in the field, everybody you're talking to in the field will use the term we. But I have no idea who I'm dealing with.
Okay, thanks a lot for that question. I see that one person doesn't know where to find the raise hand. It is found either under the reactions button, the chat button, or the participants button. Having said that, Jan, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes. Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
perfectly.
All right. Hi, Grant. Thank you so much. This is great. You've talked with lots of people, and one question on my mind is, there's talk about doing CE5s and different contact modalities.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm wondering is that the best way to use our time and energy to be supportive, or, what's the best way from your point of view for us folks to spend our time and energy and focus?
Well, it comes down to, you've got to follow your gut feeling. That if you understand that you're coming into the world in a reincarnation world, assuming it's a reincarnation world, then you probably came in to do something. And so your higher self, and you came into for a plan, and you got to listen to the inner voice that's telling you what to do. So it may be CE5, like Stephen Greer has done a tremendous amount of material CE5. People have different modalities, and that's where people start to parse it. They say, okay, my modality, I remember the thing with the contactees and the channelers. So the contactees, I remember the saying to me, don't put us in with the channelers. We're not channelers. They're full of it. Don't lump me in those people. And that's the thing, is we sort of think that there's good things and bad things. And what I think is there's a bunch of different modalities, and it's like musicians. Some people can play music, and then some people are professional musicians, and some people are musical prodigies. So it's what your inner self tells you to do. You got to sort of follow that, because if you're trying to figure out what's the right thing, your left brain is running the show. Your left brain is trying to rationally analyze this thing, which guys are the real guys and which are the bad guys, and what should I do and stuff like that. So people have had very dramatic experiences during CE5 events. I mean, there's a book coming out with Mark Sims, if you've seen that book, Tejabar. And he has this encounter. He has an experience with Stephen Greer. He has this thing appears, and I said, did you just see it? I mean, because I always want to know the question, was this personal? Are they talking to you? Like, why do UFOs have lights on them? They have lights because they want to wake you up. You don't see it for random. They want you to see something. And then he goes back to his room, and he does this CE5. He's sort of blown away by seeing this thing in the sky, and he's this big computer guy. And this being appears in his room, and it says, I'm from 4,000 years ago on Earth. I'm not an alien. And he goes down that route, and when you get down this road, you go down the rabbit hole, and then you know you're in the right place, because you become obsessed with it and you start going. So I think it's following your inner self. I don't think there's any one modality that has got all the answers. There's all sorts of different modalities. I think some are very important. I'm going to show you the ones with the blindfold. I think sort of indicate that, there's not enough research being done on it, that if you can solve this problem, you can solve an awful lot of the paranormal stuff. I'm not sure there's a real, and now they're doing the CE6 things. I don't know if you've seen that with the radios. I'm actually doing interview tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the afternoon with the guys with the radios, and that came out of the CE5 stuff, where they use these handheld radios, and they send signals to these handheld radios, and they are all across the country, and all the radios will start to go off with this, and they haven't interpreted the signal coming back, but that's what I would say. You've got to follow your inner feeling and figure out why am I here? What am I supposed to do? Everybody, I think, has a mission. Everybody has something they're supposed to do. And it's the ability to shut down the rational, analytical mind that wants to try to figure it out and rationalize it, and wait for, whether you're using meditation or whether you're using dreams or lucid dreaming or whatever technique you're using, to try to get the signal shut down, or the noise shut down, and pick up the signal and figure out what you're supposed to be doing.
Thank you.
Okay, that's probably long enough for our interview, our questions here, so that we don't break your continuity here. I will mention one thing, and that's CE5 for anybody that does not know. This is a contact protocol that's been developed by Stephen Greer and others, and you can download an app from iPhones and Androids to go ahead and follow that protocol. So with that, Grant, go ahead on your talk.
I'll just make one quick more point. Well, one of the things, a problem I think we have in ufology, like with CE5s and stuff, people always say, oh, you're going to come to the Skywatch. And I go, nah, I've seen UFOs. I don't want to come to the Skywatch. And I think one of the problems in ufology is that a lot of ufology has turned into entertainment, that people are sort of doing things for entertainment. In the old days, in the turn of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, people were going to mediumship. They were going to seances. And it was sort of like, okay, we got nothing to do, so let's go talk to some dead people. And even with this dead people or UFOs, a lot of it, I think, a lot of people are into it for entertainment purposes. They just are curious, and they find it as entertaining as anything else. Here's Gary Nolan. He's one of the guys that's working on this study on the experiencers. He's from Stanford University. I think I'll be interviewing him shortly, but he does the DNA stuff. And what you got to realize with all these high-end guys that you hear about, whether it's Gary Nolan or Jim Semivan, the CIA guy, or people like that, is that a lot of these people are experiencers. Gary Nolan is an experiencer. He had the beings in his when he was a young kid, and he knows this modality thing. He's the one that did the famous Stephen Greer thing and said it was a fetus, and so he's been very controversial in this kind of stuff. And they're working on this thing with the caudate putamen. So they're looking at brain patterns of experiencers and trying to find out, and they find out that this caudate putamen is there's increased fiber in this area of the brain. Now, what I would say, and I'll get to in a minute, it shows that if a brain section is enlarged, that means it's being used more. So whatever the phenomena is, it's using this section of the brain to make contact with experiencers. So it's not that the experiencer is, saying the right prayer or something. They have this sort of almost like the wiring in their brain turns the signal, and they're able to pick up the signal of the beings. And it may come from numerous messages that they've gotten. The other one that we've realized on people who are experiencers, this is Persinger, who's now died. He was at Laurentian University in Canada, and he talked about this whole deal of using the Schumann's resonance, that they found that guys like Ingo Swann, that when they were on target, their brain was in Schumann's resonance. So this is again, this idea where it's much more complex than what you think it is. It's not just simply you're psychic. You have to, instead of describing what's going on, because a lot of stuff in science, this is one of the things that was given to me in 2017, that are you describing or are you explaining? I'd say 99.9% of all science is describing. This happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. Don't worry about it. We've got to understood. No, you're just describing. It's like Moses and the Red Sea. Moses went and he had a staff, and he went and touched the Red Sea, and the sea opened, and the wind came up, and the children of Israel went through, and then he closed the sea or whatever. It's like, good, nice story. Now, how do you do the trick? And that's what we're doing we'll do like with a cell division. We'll say, it's just cell division. Don't worry about it. And you say, really? Just cell division? It's 100 trillion atoms that the cell that's never made a cell will source 100 trillion atoms, put them together, put them in the right three-dimensional spot at the right place, and give them life. And it just does this like in a couple of hours, the first time it does it. And you say, oh, don't worry, it's just cell division. Don't worry, it's just no big mystery here. There is a big mystery. You're just describing the process. This happens, this happens. You're not explaining anything. You're just describing. So here's some of the stuff that we've discovered on the brain. Like the brain, you think the brain is very, very stable. It does this thing. We know that meditation will change the brain. So the question is, and this comes down to the thing with the ego, who's upset? Who's fearful? Who's meditating? So if I were to say to all the people on this broadcast, okay, do a meditation. Somebody's going to do a Vipassana meditation. Somebody's going to do an awareness meditation. Somebody's going to do a gratitude meditation. Who's determining what meditation to do? And your brain will show a certain pattern. So meditation will change the brain. We know this for a fact, that's a thought changing the brain, which turns it around, because almost all of neuroscience will say the brain creates consciousness. This proves the opposite. Meditation, a thought will change the physical structure of the brain. Psychedelics can reprogram the brain. Taxi cab drivers, they knew this, did a study in London where it's huge numbers of streets they had to know their posterior hippocampus is much larger because they have to learn to all these streets and where it is. Bilingual people, their brain is different. Music, gray matter is higher percentage. Medical students have the parietal cortex because they're memorizing. They're memorizing all these different things, retrieval, and that part of the brain will actually increase in size because that's how it works. Is it needs that, and but it's the thought, it's the memorization, it's the individual, it's the person who's doing. It's the old question: is who am I? You are not your brain. You are the person who's telling your brain what to do. Exercise changes the brain. So we've started to realize these things, that the brain actually can change based upon your thoughts. This is one of the big rules here, is this one: use it or lose it. That if you don't use your brain, it'll take all the synapses and cut them off. That a child has way more brain synapses and stuff like that than an adult, and it prunes all these things off. And they even had to do these experiments, like we take a mouse, you shut one eye off at birth, that he will be blind in that eye, because you need the stimulation for the eye to develop. And if you cut it off, the eye will not develop. The brain is use it or lose it. And this thing about pairing it off. So this is where they're starting to do these experiments where they realize that experiencers have this this is this structure inside the experiencer brain where they realize there's all this different stuff, and they're saying, well, that's what makes them psychic. And I'm saying, no, again, you're making this thing that the brain is making, the brain is doing the psychic stuff. The thought, the continual contact or whatever is causing it increases that part of the brain to increase in size in order to get the signal. It's sort of, to me, they've always got it reversed, that they're saying, you know, like if I say to Paul, okay, Paul, who's your first girlfriend? Of a name will pop into your head, and it's like, really, do you actually think that there are neurons that have brains that had a, when I asked you that question, or Deepak Chopra always uses the one where, think of a sunset on the ocean, and this sunset comes into your head. Well, where is that sunset? How did that come? Was there actually neurons that had a little board meeting and they got together and they said, okay, we got to find Paul's girlfriend here. Let's have a meeting here. Okay, now you neuron, you go up to the third floor down to the room 311, look in the second filing cabinet under girlfriends and find that and bring it back. That's not how it's working. We have this illusion that the brain is doing all this stuff, and it's almost automatic. And it's the idea that there's the consciousness is running the brain. Here's Whitley Strieber talks about this brain, this implant. He has the implant, which is very interesting, in his ear. It was put in 1989, I believe, and then he fought it. He tried to get it removed, and then they couldn't get it. It kept moving around in his ear and stuff like that. He now calls it the what's called the muse, the muse on steroids or something. That he actually believes that this thing is able to pick up the subconscious ideas and put them into his conscious mind, and that he knows when it's on, it turns on. And he said his writing has completely changed since he learned how to use this implant that's in his brain. This is this thing about the free survey, and they've taken this stuff off. I don't know why they did, because they had some really good stats. This is the one that I say, this is the whole contact modality thing. So people say, well, you know, I really don't know about this. And you take a look at experiencers who are in the matrix reality for whatever they've had, what kind of, you know, paranormal experience, whatever. When they're in the matrix, 40% of all experiencers will say at one point during their experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe. And I say, is that not a good idea that we maybe should talk to these people? Now, you can have some doubts about it, but when 40% of people are saying, I knew everything in the universe during my experience, that means that the beings or whoever took them into that field has the answer to everything in the universe. All this stuff is in the universe, is accessible, and it's the ability to access the material. It's the ability to rip the filter. It's the ability to get in there. Or 20% say they knew everything about themselves. I just had recently someone telling me this whole thing, that they had lived like a thousand of their lives, of potential lives that they could have lived, all these different lines of experience, 1,000 different lines of experience that could have happened, like these, what do they call them? These, well, timelines. And he said, have them in 5 minutes. And you start looking at that stuff and you realize, like, I mean, we're missing the boat here. We have no clue what's going on here. It is way more complex than people do. But if people are accessed, and the same thing happens with near-death experience, I think it's basically the same sort of figure. The people who have near-death experiences will determine or tell you that they were told to write books, they were given information, they were given inventions, and that they knew the answer to everything in the universe at one point. And when they went back, they said, I'm going to remember this. And they said, no, you won't remember this. No, you won't. And it's like a dream. It disappears as they come back. And all they can remember is that they at one point knew the answer to everything in the universe. That's pretty powerful, that this is there. It tells you that there's a great potential there if we can figure out how this thing works. You feel connected to all living things. 91%. This is this oneness experience, which I have experienced. In fact, I forgot to mention before that Jill Bolte Taylor, when she talked about the left brain completely being shut off when she had the hemorrhage in the left brain, she was out of contact for 7 weeks until they did the operation and the left brain started to come back online. She said she was one with the universe, and she described, I've actually had that experience. I can actually say I'm pretty privileged. I say I'm the luckiest person in the world. And if you think you're luckier than me, put your chips on the table. I'm going to check your pockets to make sure you've got no chips left. I will call you. I am the luckiest person in the world. I had that experience where I was absolutely in a place where there was no fear, where everything was perfect. And she describes this this experience that she got when the left brain shut down. oneness and love. People ask the question about what's the whole thing about. The number one thing that people are talked to about oneness and love, which if you're going to make up a story, doesn't make any sense. Why would aliens talk to you about oneness? It's the idea that we are one with the Gaia, we are one with the universe. We detonated an atomic bomb, and because it's all one thing, it's a bell. We rang one corner of the bell, and the entire universe knew that we had rung the bell, and that's why they showed up here. And we are about to flush the planet down the drain. We are into this me versus you, countries, this sort of thing. And the idea of love, that love is the core of the universe. It's the basis of the universe. The same thing I'm getting, and mine aren't coming, the modalities I use aren't ET. I've never had an experience with an ET or anything like that. I had a lot of UFO sightings, which may be linked, but I'm not getting this from ETs. I'm getting basically the same sort of thing. Although I'm basically shown this, people sort of object to me. I say, love is the basis of the universe, what they told me. Love may be the core of the universe, but don't confuse us with your cookie baking grandma. The universe has rules, and it can be very cruel. People die, people have all sorts of things. The world runs on rules. The rules are set up, and it's like you obey the rules, you don't obey the rules. It is very neutral. And yet, when I had this experience that Jill Bolte Taylor talks about, being this sort of one with the universe where everything was perfect and there was no fear. And the only thing I can refer to it, it was like when I was in it, I'm thinking, I got to remember this. I got to remember this. And I knew I was going to forget most of it, but it was like the biblical thing where you were thrown up into the realms of heaven. That's all I could think about. This is what they're describing. And it was the most powerful experience I've ever had in my life. But again, you have this, so I've seen the cookie baking grandma side, and I've seen the other side that basically told me at one point early last year, this is nothing personal, but a bunch of people, a number of people are about to die. So I've seen all these different things, and sometimes people think that the universe is not as cruel. I say the universe is very neutral, and it's up to us that in fact, I've got a theory now that we are the ones that create the universe. God didn't create the universe. God created the sparks of the divine, and the sparks of the divine actually create the universe. They build stuff. When you're in between lives, you actually build stuff. And depending on your level, this Tejabar, Mark Sims' book described that. And I do my podcast. I have a new podcast called Paranormal UFO Consciousness Podcast. I do an interview where I go back to him. I say, hey, I need to see this thing that Tejabar showed you. He was with him for 13 days, and he gave him this pattern about how the universe, how you go through these different levels, from animals up to humans, to spirit beings, and to beings that actually create galaxies. And I said, that's what Michael Newton said in Journey of Souls, and I got it as well. At one point, they showed me this and didn't make very much sense. And I said, that doesn't make any sense. And after a couple of days, I suddenly realized I've been given the same thing. This idea that we are in this progression where we move up, where at some point we will actually be creating planets and galaxies, and it's all about stories. It's all about creating it, but it is the sparks of the divine. The God, or whatever you want to call it, the source, doesn't know anything, because it's one. It's not until you have the separation that you have the duality, and you start creating stories for God. You start creating this thing, and the universe starts to build. But it's not God. It's these beings. So I'm going to give you 2 more slides, and then we'll go through, because oneness is the key message. I would say of anything you want to remember, oneness is absolutely the number one thing, according to me, in all the paranormal traditions that I've looked at and stuff like that. And as you see, 54% of all people who've been on board a flying saucer where everybody thinks, oh, you're just raping the women and the men and stuff like this, and they're talked to about oneness. This is Desta Barnaby, who's my assistant. She did this channeling thing. She had a being come to her, a bunch of beings come to her, and they actually showed her. They put her hand on her shoulder. She was doing all these different things, trying to do this channeling thing, trying to do out-of-body experience. And they said, here's how it works. And they put their hand on her shoulder, and she could feel her brain pattern going down. And she does channeling, she does QHHT, she does healing, she does all this kind of stuff from that event, where they said, this is what it feels like. And once they took it down, she could feel her brain as you go on from alpha down through theta into the sleep state. When you go down through theta, that's where this all happens, in this theta state. Then she can do it. She can go into that state. She could not do it for years. Here's what she channels, because I would ask her questions. I'd say, ask them this, ask them that. And that's the whole idea. If she's in the field, let's start asking her questions. Let's in fact, today there was some guys had questions. She was in the interview. I said, just ask Desta. Desta will ask them, and she'll get some sort of answer. The source is having an infinite number of experiences, and you are all connected. because you are all one source reflecting upon itself. And I won't read the whole thing, but basically it's this one. She said, like, she can type in the dark. She said, I was getting tired because I had to go capital O, because they always want oneness with a capital O. She could type one, and everything is about this oneness thing. So that's the channeler. Then you get, this is, guy wrote the Brett Oldham wrote I did on my podcast. I just do replay an interview I did with him. He wrote a book called Children of the Greys. He was no big fan of the Greys. They took his child. He was very furious. He said, if I had a chance, I would have broke their neck. And on there, he does this confrontation with the being, the tall gray. He said, let me ask you a question. What's your concept of God? And the being said, we are one with the one who is all. And Brett said, I was so shocked, I had to sit down. I was just, and then suddenly this 3D holographic image started to come. This formula started coming around him. And it happened to another girl as well, the same thing. And he could walk around inside this formula. And they said, you know, you got a disease on your planet. It's called cancer. This is the cure. And he said, oh, it is? Can I get a piece of paper? I got a good memory. And they said, no, you have to remember it. No, but I'm not a good memory. Give me a piece of paper. And he got so upset, the small grays came in and actually took him out of the room. So you see this, a confrontation with the gray, and he goes, we are one with the one who is all. This is Edgar Cayce, who I started before I actually did the UFO thing. I was interested in Edgar Cayce. This is what Edgar Cayce said. This is going back to the 1920s, 1930s, the sleeping prophet, doing trance channeling. The first lesson for 6 months should be one. Oneness of God, oneness of man's relationship, oneness of force, oneness of time, oneness of purpose, oneness in every effort, oneness, I guarantee you, is the rule. This is where it comes down to. Last year when I was there, or whenever last time I was in Boulder, we were going to do the thing, your football team was playing and we actually had nobody show up because there was no place to park and all this kind of stuff. What we have done is we've turned the world into a giant football game. And it's the ends justifies the means. We're all on a team. So it's my team versus your team, and the ends justifies the means. So if you can steal the signals, if you can, so guys are walking around with clipboards over their mouths. So the other side, it's whatever you need to do. If you need to injure a player or whatever, this is what it comes down to. We need to win. Win is, and we have to realize we're all on the same team. Once you get in separation, you believe there's my team versus your team, then you get into the world view is, well, my team's the good team and your team's the bad team, and God is pulling for my team, and the ref is pulling, and the ref is paid off by you guys, and you're a bunch of dirty players, and that's where we've turned it. We've turned it into a world of separation where we're pitted against each other, and what the beings are saying is you need to change this or it's over. You cannot continue this separation thing. You got to realize you're all bees in the hive. You're all cells, one of 85 trillion cells. You all have to do your job. And once you decide that you are separate, you are an individual, then you become the cancer cell, and you can say you have all the rights. I'm going to be a cancer cell. The idea is that when you get into a football huddle, you don't say, okay, everybody do whatever you want to do. Everybody has to do what they're supposed to do. And that's the whole thing. We work as one. If we start working as separate teams and fight against each other, it's going to collapse. That's where all the problems. My famous expression I'd like to be known for is I say everything that is considered to be evil in the modern world is created by one thing and one thing only: the mistaken belief in separation. Everything that is good is the belief in oneness. So I'll open up for questions now.
Okay, thank you. We saw one question somebody asked on the chat as to what's the difference between portals and vortices. I might suggest that portals are a place where there might be a thinning of reality, and a place where you can have a different kind of experience. Some portals can persist, like places like Avebury maybe. Other portals can disappear, reappear, disappear. You can even form them. A vortex, by contrast, is a place where two energy lines or more tend to blend or cross, and it creates a vortex, an energy. And it's interesting to be in one, but you don't want to live there. Some of these places like the Glastonbury Chapel in Glastonbury, England, there's a vortex right at the very center of the nave where the Michael and Mary ley lines cross. So that's a quickie on that. I'm looking for questions, and I see Cynthia's got one. So put your mic on and go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, it's me, Elizabeth. I'm wondering, what's the point of COVID right now?
You don't want to hear my thing on COVID. I call it the oneness virus. It is a direct message that says you are all one. You may think you're not one. This proves you're all one. You're all connected. And it comes down to, we have some areas in Canada. I'll give you an example in Canada, and this is all I'll say. I mean, this gets very controversial. We have areas in Canada. We have Ontario now that is completely shut down because we're way behind in vaccine stuff. We have huge, it's absolutely don't leave your house type stuff. And we have some areas in Canada where there's no COVID. There's never been any COVID, none. And you can see very clearly that where the cities, like for example, one place is where Stanton Friedman's files are, New Brunswick. There is basically, I think they've had 33 deaths, and they have the same population as North Dakota. North Dakota has 1,500 deaths. They have 33. It comes down to the idea of separation versus oneness. When you completely shut the thing down and you say the one is going to be protected, you have no rights. It all shuts down. But when you say everybody's an individual, do whatever you want, then you have a situation where you may have the freedom and this kind of stuff, but everybody's doing whatever they want. Everybody's like a cell that does whatever they want. So that's the thing is we have this idea that it's uniform around the world. It's not uniform around the world. There are many places, South Korea, as I said, there's 6 of 13 areas in Canada that basically don't have any. There was one place that didn't have a case. Forget about a death. They didn't have a case until about 2 months ago when they let somebody out, because everybody is a place where you got to fly in. They let somebody through an airport thinking there's no problem there, and then suddenly it sort of broke out. So I call it the oneness virus. Everything to me is a message. I have a theory called the theory of wow, where I say the beings. I think it's all like George, Bigelow said about Skinwalker Ranch. What's your conclusion about Skinwalker Ranch? He said it's all about messaging. Everything is messaging. You can learn from whatever. So people have because we do the duality thing. We said there's good things, there's bad things. No, there's just things. In a reincarnation world, there's just things. If you are coming into a world, then people will complain about this or that. I'll say, just remember that I and you both came into the world at this time, at this particular place, in the middle of whatever mess we're complaining about, and maybe we came in at this time and this place in the middle of this mess for a particular reason. In the reincarnation world, it's experience. So you choose to be sick, you choose to have these experiences, and everything's an experience. It's how you play your cards, not what cards. We're always forever in the world trying to get them to change the deck. Quit dealing me the 2s and the 3s. Start dealing me aces and kings. This is not fair. I'm being mistreated by the universe. So everything to me is experience. We can learn from whatever happens to us, and we have to take personal responsibility for whatever happens to us. If we don't take personal responsibility and blame, the dog ate my homework and my mother-in-law, at the end, my idea is the Michael Newton stuff, which came the same as the inspirations I got. The Michael Newton stuff says, when you leave the world, you only get asked one question. How did it work out? Because you and I planned it. We planned the world. You can't blame your mother-in-law. You can't. They'll cut you off. They'll say, no, this is not about you. Entered the stage. You decided to play this role in life. We are visitors on this planet. We came in to play a role on a stage. But I always point out to people, you are not the player. You are not the actor on the stage. You came in to play an actor on a stage. Big difference. We came in because I played King Henry VIII when I was in high school. Does not mean I'm King Henry VIII. I'm Grant for this few years, and then I'm going to go off. Whitley Strieber's wife gave him a very important message. She said to him, and every time I think about it, it just resonates with me. She said, Whitley, I am no longer Anne, but I'll always be Anne to you. So that's the whole deal. You come on, she plays Anne on the stage, she goes, now she's playing a different role. Whitley actually thinks she's a boy, that he thinks he knows she's reincarnated and he knows who she is. So we're playing a role, and it's how you play the cards that are dealt to you. We have to take personal responsibility for the fact that whatever happens to us, we may have planned that coming into the world. We want to sort of blame God and all sorts of other things. We have, in a reincarnation world, everything, that's what they said. All the rules change. You have to realize that you chose something, and that the things that are happening to you may be things that you put your own stones in your path to learn things. And we want, like, just give me the good stuff. Don't give me any of the bad stuff. And we're into this sort of world of materialism where everything is the good stuff and the bad stuff. And people will tell you that sometimes, most times, the bad stuff is when you really learn something. When stuff is going good, your ego just gets inflated and says, oh, I'm so smart, I got this all figured out. And you learn nothing when things are going well. It's the bad things that happen that sort of get you the message. And I say it's all about messaging. It's about learning. It's about coming into the world to learn a lesson. And we are given different messages, and we are reincarnating, and you're gonna die thousands of times. We're gonna have all sorts of diseases, and it all is how you deal with what's given to you. So COVID is no different than any other disease or thing that we just say, don't give me this, don't give me that, and leave it for the other people and in other worlds. I just want the good stuff. And I say, no, you're going to get all this stuff. And I believe that I put these things, whatever happens to me, until you take personal responsibility in a sickness, until you say, I'm going to own this, I'm going to do it. You can never survive. You're always going to be blaming other people, feeling sorry for yourself, and you're not going anywhere.
Got to choose fearlessness.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, yeah. Or realize that it's all, like, when you have this state, like I was in this state that Jill Bolte Taylor talks about. When you're in that state, and the message I come from that state was, I told people when I came out of it, I said, I can absolutely assure you that everything is perfect. There is nothing to worry about. Nothing. I was actually told that I might die. And I was prepared. I said, yeah. And I was thinking, I haven't got the will ready. I go, they'll figure it out. Kid will figure it out. It's not my problem. And it was that kind of thing where I was totally at peace with the world. So that's what I have. I actually did an interview that we did. We had 3 people. One had a near-death experience. She was thrown off her motorcycle 50 years ago, face first into the concrete, was suicidal. She basically lost her face. We had another guy who was in a float tank. So these are different modalities. One is a float tank. One was a regressionist who was actually reading a book. She was just sitting there reading a book. And they all got this same thing where they suddenly realized everything in the world is exactly the way it's supposed to be. All the good stuff, all the bad stuff, it's all the way it's supposed to be. And they were, the one guy that did the float tank, he was so embarrassed. He never told his family. I was the first person he told. He said, I got to tell you this weird story. I couldn't believe it. She said, like, everything is perfect. Everything's exactly the way it's supposed to be. And it just blew me away, but I knew it for a fact. So we interviewed these 3 people, and they all tell exactly the same story. This idea that it's all perfect. It's all being chosen, that we're running through these patterns and stuff like that. And that was the feeling I got in that thing. It was the number one thing. It was like, whatever you think, whatever is happening, everything is absolutely going to work out okay. It was like, when it's all over and you're in this field, you have no idea. It's like, wow, I just like could have stayed there forever, and just amazing. And I got this same feeling. Everything is perfect. Worrying about this, worrying about that. There's nothing to worry about.
Well, when you said earlier that you were told that a lot of people were going to die,
yeah.
What do you feel that message was about?
I really didn't want to deal with it. I just know I had a session where I was taken through 6 death scenes. And then I had this other one where I had this thing about, I just got this message. I was taken in the death scene. I woke up in a coffin, and I was kind of weird because I was like, I knew I was in a coffin, but yet I couldn't really see anything. And I could see I was in a church, and the light was coming in, and I was thinking, that's kind of weird. Like, why is the light only coming in the left side of the stained glass window? And it was this kind of thing. And then they took me above the earth, and I saw souls leaving the earth and stuff. And they showed me this kind of stuff. So when it came, I've heard the stuff like the CIA. There's this thing about the 90% cull thing. I asked Ron Pandolfi actually on a thing, because he was rumored to have said this. So I didn't want to link it into anything. I actually didn't even mention it till maybe a month ago that I'd been told that. I just said, I don't know what this is about. But it was just very matter of fact. It's like, and that's what they said. This is nothing personal, but a bunch of people are, so I don't know what it really related to. It may not still be here. Maybe in the future. I don't know. Nobody said what it was.
Okay, with that, we're going to move on to the regular prepared part. I will add, there was one question or comment here to everyone saying, what about previous lives? Is this because we did not learn what we needed? And Grant, you've talked more than once about Michael Newton. we listen to him about every week on an audiobook. And I think what he would say is that nobody tells us we have to come back and have another lifetime. We choose to learn more about a different topic or a different problem or whatever it is, and we do it until we feel like we've learned what we have to learn. So with that, would you like to pick up on the slides with the
I'll just
CU
add,
football team here?
I'll just add 10 seconds to that when you die, you have complete knowledge of what's going on. You suddenly go, oh, you go back to the soul group and you suddenly realize that the idea is to come into the world to do something. And it's like a lot of people say, you know, I'm not coming back. I think, yeah, as soon as you die, you're going to know what's going on. You're going to come back. I mean, you guarantee. And that's, you have a different understanding of how the world works. Even with a near-death experience, you have a different understanding. Once you get in the field, you got to realize you're in a field where the left brain is running the show and you got all this noise and you're basically trying to make a living and you're in this physical world that shuts all this off, that you're in a completely different world once you die. You have understanding that you don't have now. Now here's this, Paul and I were talking about this. This is I call him Seth, the Australian blindfold boy. And Paul, you had seen the video of him driving the car and he was driving around in these trees and stuff. I think this is one of the most revolutionary stuff that nobody, well, yeah, I'm not going to say, this is being studied. It is about to be studied at the Ions Institute. And one of the top reporters in the world is working on it. She swore me to secrecy. She said, because I brought it up and she said, do not talk about this. We are about to do a TV series on this. This is absolutely impressive. This is the idea that you may not be seeing with your eyes. You may not be hearing with your ears. You have all these senses that you don't really realize you have, that you can pick up on stuff like that. And so this kid, he did some videos and then they sort of, maybe they got some backlash or something. And suddenly they said, we're not going to do any more videos. We don't want to talk about this anymore. And now he started to send me some more videos. I'm going to show the latest videos that he showed. So this is Seth. He's in Australia. He was trained by his grandmother. Here's his grandmother here. Whoop, hang on. His grandmother here. Hang on. What's going on here?
Yeah. So let me ask with Seth, when you have the blindfold on, can you actually see us?
Oh yeah.
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 Put the blindfold on. Let's start here.
There's a newspaper on with really.
I'm gonna go get some sheets. He doesn't know what I'm gonna get.
Oh, okay.
Under the colored sheets. There's some.
I actually stuck my tongue out at it and he started laughing.
I actually, in their practice, they actually read micro print upside down, something like this.
He reads that upside down.
Wow.
Upside down, they'll read that, but that's too small to demonstrate.
Wow.
Because they can magnify their vision as well.
So Seth, you can see me? You can see me?
How big is it open? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you show Grant on the mask where you can see him?
I can see him there.
Right there.
Over here. Yep.
Wow,
You
that's
see
pretty,
what?
that's pretty
Can
cool.
you see what I put on the screen? A ace with hearts. Excellent.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
Okay.
Okay, keep going.
Can you see it? A diamond 10. Yes.
Wow.
Triangle. What color is it? Pink. Yeah.
Nice and loud, honey.
A red zigzag. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
A green half circle. Yeah.
He can't see you now, Wendy.
Speak,
can he?
speak when
I
you-
have to
when you're
stop.
doing it.
Okay, I gotta
Now
keep
he can
talking.
Yeah.
I gotta keep talking. People behind a green couch. Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. Yep. Okay, there you go. A red autumn leaf.
We call them autumn leaves. Yeah.
That's okay.
That's the Canadian.
What's that? A table with like a cat underneath it. Uh-huh. And is there, oh,
I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
what's on the table? A bowl. Uh-huh. It's starting to get all wavy now.
It's starting to getting a bit nervous. It's
No.
getting a bit wavy. It's probably the pressure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know.
Wow, I am
wouldn't be able to-
impressed.
Okay.
Well
100%.
done, Seth.
Yeah,
Well
100%.
done.
I'm impressed. What do you like? Maybe I can ask everybody here. What do you think's actually going on? What's seeing? How does this work?
This is the blindfold. People will say they're peeking. These are blindfolds. We've actually bought some. I'm actually going to try to start this online. We're going to teach. So if anybody's got a kid that wants to learn to do this, kids can pick this up very fast. And the theory behind it is that the kid's left brain is not engaged. Once your left brain comes online, when you're about the age that Seth is, it starts to shut down, that they start losing this ability to do this. You can teach a young kid, 5, 6 years old, to see colors in minutes. They can read books. Seth actually read a book later on in this interview where he was reading an entire page of a book. They're very, very highly skilled at this. There's training centers all around the world where they're teaching kids to do this kind of stuff. And as I mentioned, some of the big people are starting to pick up on this. This changes the whole paradigm. I mean, if you can see without your eyes, then our whole idea of what's going on is completely messed up. So this is the thing that the blindfold, which shows you there's no way he's peeking outside of the blindfold. Now this is, is this video going to work? Hang on. So he's got his blindfold and he's got a bow and he's knocking off tin cans off. So they were doing some of these other demonstrations. He did one where he actually does somebody puts their hand on a table, he takes a knife and he goes bang, 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 bang between their fingers with his blindfold on. But they said they'll do that one later on, and Grandma's going to volunteer to put her hand on the table. Hang on. Why are these videos? Some of these videos may not be playing here. Oh, here they are playing video games.
Okay, the kids are playing the game Fortnite together. Layla's using the small screen in opposition to Seth, who's using the big screen. Can you turn and face me for a sec, guys? They have their masks on. Layla? Sorry. Okay, keep playing.
Now, one interesting thing is Layla actually was in school. She was put in a special school, and she lost the ability. And they believe it was because it's a very left brain place in the school, and they retrained her because her brother is very good at this. And so the grandmother teaches them. The grandmother was actually trained in Canada. And what we want to do is get this woman, the grandmother, there's 2 trainers in Canada, and we want to put it online, and anybody can come there like we're doing right now. And you turn off your camera, turn off your audio, and put the kid in front of the thing, and the adult will communicate with us as to whether they're seeing it or whatever. And we want to sort of expand this thing. Here they are playing video games again. There's all sorts of things where they're playing different.
1, 2.
I've always given them the challenge to do it in the dark. And ultimately, the big challenge that we're going to get is, I said, they've got kids playing ping pong with the blindfolds on. I said, I want to see kids playing ping pong with the lights out, playing with the blindfolds on. Because everybody, of course, says they're peeking. Because he doesn't, you see sort of in a part of the blindfold, people see in different spots. And he sees sort of on the right side of the blindfold. And he describes the fact that it's there's no depth perception. It's not a proper depth perception. And that's where he had the trouble when he's driving the car. And the other thing is that once you get nervous, he said it starts to become wavy. The image starts to become wavy and he has to stop doing it. So we're very excited about this kind of stuff. This changes the whole paradigm of how things actually work. Here's another one where they're playing. There's a lot of these kids around that are being trained by different, and they're training blind people as well. They're Utah, they have blind people that have been trained to do this as well. Like people said, why would you want to train this? And I say, well, perhaps blind people, or these kids will report in interviews. I watch the interviews, and then the kid at one point will say, my hearing actually got better. I could hear someone a mile away. And the grandmother actually described the fact that they were doing the training one time, and the kid said, oh, there's an accident. And the accident was like 3 blocks away or something like that.
Seth's going to read the colours.
This is amazing.
That Layla's holding up. She's standing in the netted trampoline, which is obscuring
You can't even see her. She's way in the back on the trampoline in the trees.
Yeah.
Yellow.
And she's just holding up a little card with a color on it.
Orange. Pink. Green. Purple. Red.
Okay, so he's pretty good at it. Here's an interesting one that came. They showed me this. Everybody knows I'm into orbs. So then she sent me this thing, all these orbs. Here comes one. It's going to go up near his head. There's one by his head there. There's another one. Another one. That was just a little sidelight. Now I'm going to go through some of the contact modalities. Here's some of the big ones, and this is when you get into understanding how people actually invent stuff. The hypnagogic state. This is the idea for the carbon ring came in this kind of state. And they've actually done studies in labs where they test people and show that the brain patterns are actually different during this thing. So that the signal becomes tuned into a different station. What I say it is when you wake up or just before you go to sleep, you're going from alpha down through theta into delta, which is sleep state. And you have to go through theta. Theta is where it happens. So that's the in-between state. And people will get impressions like I showed you Gary Nolan there before. Well, I got a quote from Gary Nolan later, but so you go through that state, and that's when people will describe the fact that they can remember dreams and stuff. Weird stuff happens just before they go to sleep. The beings talk to them, or something happens, and that's because you're in this sort of a theta state. Now, Edison actually used this state. There's actually a statue of him with a steel ball in his hand, and the story behind the steel ball was that he always claimed that he never slept. And then he would go into his laboratory and he would just sort of meditate in his laboratory. He would put his hands on the side of a chair. He would sit in the chair and he'd have the steel ball in his hand. And he'd put a steel plate on the floor, a steel bowl on the floor. And then he would just sort of meditate. Of course, he'd fall asleep because he didn't sleep at night. He'd fall asleep and his hand would relax. The steel ball would fall into the steel plate and the bowl and would wake him up. And he would quickly write down what was in his head. And he would do this over and over and over again. And that was the whole idea, is during that state. So if you can get into this hypnagogic state in between sleep and being awake, you can pick up this kind of stuff because you're in that open state where the left brain is still shut down. Once you wake up, if you move a finger or something, when you wake up, as soon as you move a finger, the left brain says, oh, Paul's waking up. We gotta go. Come on, wake up. And and the filter shuts. It shuts the filter off, and your dream starts to go. You're gonna remember the dream, and the dream is going down the drain like a toilet. And that's the way it works. Is this filter is open during sleep. So that's when you get a lot of being reports that people will describe. Well, I don't really get abducted. They just come to me in my dreams. And as Bashar said, the famous channeler said, we come to you in your dreams because now you're in our world. And that's the whole deal. Your left brain is shut down, and they can communicate with you when your left brain shuts down. Now, Gary Nolan, who is this guy from Stanford University who's doing the DNA stuff, maybe up for a Nobel Prize, he talks about this ability to do this. He said, usually I lay out the most recent problem I need to solve in my head. Sometimes just before bed, he continued, I think of all the possible parts of the problem that I can. What the question is, what would the perfect answer enable? What is a practical answer? What pieces of things could possibly go into making the answer? Then I just asked the subconscious process in my head, which I laughingly refer to as little elves. You got to remember, this guy's a PhD at Stanford University. I asked the little elves to work on the problem while I sleep. You can call them elves. I don't know what they are. I used to think they were just some version of subconscious want. Either I wake up with the answer out of the blue, or it just pops into my head in the next few days, but more often just after waking. So he basically at one point he said, I don't know how it works, but I know how to make it work. And that's the whole deal. There are ways to do this. We're starting to learn how to shut the left brain down, when to do this, when to pay attention. And one of the keys is just before you go to sleep and just when you wake up, you're in this state where you're not really awake. You're still in the field. And if you've got something that's coming, be very careful. Do not move anything. Get it all ready, and then jump out of bed and quickly write it down. Deepak Chopra has written 90 books. I was shocked when I heard this. He said, you know how I wrote 90 books? Deepak Chopra gets up before sunrise and he meditates, and then he does yoga, but he does something before. I never knew he described this. He says, as soon as I wake up, I just lie in bed and I stare at the ceiling for half an hour. And he said, whatever comes into my head, I write down. That's where the 90 books come from. That's the only place they come from. It all came from what happened 30 minutes after he wakes up. And that's the whole thing. You got to be very still. You're still in the field. You're in that sort of thing where all the answers are, and you just sit there and stay quiet and wait for stuff to come into your head, and it will come. Deepak Chopra, 90 books based upon what happens a half hour after he wakes up as he stares at the ceiling. This is the one where Whitley Strieber talks about the super muse, where this implant thing is giving him this material, and he's able to know when it's on, and these little things are in his eye, these little words are going across and giving him information, and he, like me, he says it always turns out to be right, whatever they're giving him. This is a story that was told by Whitley Strieber, and these are the kind of stories I have in the book Inspired. People think, oh, they just invented, smart guys invented it. This is a story he tells of Christian Barnard, he knew Christian Barnard. So Christian Barnard is famous for doing the first implant of a baboon heart into a person, and the heart transplant, which has saved tens of thousands of people. He's the guy that invented the process. He was had a heart infection. He was in the hospital, and he started having heart palpitations. He pushed the buzzer, and because he knew he was in trouble, he pushed the buzzer. Nobody came. And he said suddenly a woman in white appeared in his room floating and came above him, put her hands on his chest, then put her hands inside his chest around his heart. Then she moved away and floated out the window. And then the nurse came running in and said, oh, we're sorry. We were busy. The woman in the room next to you just died. And he said, he was convinced that was the woman that came into his room just before she was leaving. And that's when the idea of the heart transplant came to him. All the plans of how to do it came at that moment when the woman had her hands inside his chest. So you may believe that people are just really smart and figure this stuff out, but sometimes it appears they were given it. It was handed to them. The Gansfield experiment, this is one of the ones where they're starting to do these tests where they put these people into different states where they're trying to see if they can become intuitive, if they can pick up stuff. So this kind of research is going on all the time. They use certain frequencies, and this goes to like the binaural beats and stuff. And I have 70 modalities that I talk about. I'm only going to show a few of them here, but some of them are very bizarre, like sex. A lot of people will describe sex as being a modality, that people will actually pick up stuff during this thing, that you have these heightened things, that you're changing the normal pattern of the brain. You're shutting off this sort of the rational analytical part that keeps you awake. This is the one that I get most of my stuff from. I had my two big ones. One was sitting watching Colin Andrews do a lecture where I didn't want to be in the lecture. I just wanted to get out of there and go someplace else because I wasn't interested in crop circles. And the other was walking down the street. I know exactly what street it was, exactly where on the street was. It happened very, very quickly. I had to take my glove off, and it came. And I knew, luckily I had a piece of paper, and you got to write it down because you will forget it. It will come in and it will go back out just as quickly as it came in. Daydreaming is the same sort of thing. You're quieting the left brain, you're zoning out. And that's the thing. That's what meditation is about. You're shutting down the little voice in the head. They say you're quieting your mind. No, you're shutting the little voice down. The little voice that says, oh, you're stupid. This is garbage. You're not being hypnotized. You're making this up. And you take a look at this. The laser was invented sitting on a park bench. The hologram was on a park bench. Now, these guys went through the process. They went through all the process of working the material and trying to work it and get all the results and stuff like that in the labs, and they couldn't figure it out. And then they were sitting, the one guy was waiting to go in a restaurant, he's sitting on a park bench, and suddenly, boom, it came into his head, just instantaneously, because he had quieted the brain. He just turned it off. And a lot of inventions come when the person's not really thinking about it. Or Colin Andrews describes this incident in the shower where the voice comes to him and said, it's time for you now to tell people. And he said, I knew exactly what they meant. They didn't have to tell me what it was. And it was the fact that he was an experiencer, and he didn't want to do it because he figured that was the end of my career. And then the voice said, no, timing is everything. And he actually went public with it. So they've actually made the one, I think this is Towns. This is the laser. They've actually turned the park bench that he was sitting on into a statue. Is there any questions before I go through the last couple here?
Okay, Marianne has got a comment to make.
I don't know if you can hear it from my screen. So, oops. I don't know how to do it. Okay. I was going to make a comment about the boy who was seeing without his eyes. And we have let's see if I can get this to around.
You got to go a little bit closer to the mic.
Okay. So you turn yours off and I'll turn mine on. Sorry. We're trying to do it. Turn yours off.
Now you disappeared. You need a 13-year-old kid to work your computer. That's what I always say. Are we still here? I'm not hearing anything. Oh, here we go. Now somebody's back. I hear somebody.
Yeah, that's me. What happens is we have two computers side by side, and we've got to mute one side of the hardware so they don't get crosstalk. And she was trying to figure out which side to show this book.
You're trying to break into the field.
Yeah. So we've given up on this. So are there any other questions that might be wanting to be asked? I'm not seeing anybody else.
Okay. This is one that I'll go on. This is the one that you and I, Paul, discussed when last time I was at your place. And for people, Paul will know that when I was at his place, he's got a good place because he's about 2 miles from the McDonald's. So I would go like a couple times a day and I would walk to McDonald's. And that's when I do my my waiting for the little messages to come, because you just sort of wear out the left brain and it's sort of, you're just meditating and just going along. So we talked about this. This is another thing that I think is really will change the whole world if it actually works. And this has to do with channeling. So I was looking for trance channelers. There's 3 different types. There's a relay channeler where you're just passing messages back and forth. There's this co-consciousness thing, which is sort of the same as relay channeling. Then there's trance channeling. So trance channeling is when the being takes over the body, where the person steps aside, and it's almost like multiple personality disorder people will describe. There's different stages. They'll say there's one where the guy takes over the car and he's driving the car, and there's one where they take you and throw you in the back seat with a blindfold on, and then there's the other one where they take you and they blindfold you and they throw you in the trunk and you don't even know what's going on. So the same sort of thing happens in channeling. So you have these different levels of channeling, and the deeper the trance, the less the noise, the better the signal. And that's the whole idea. So trance channelers are better than relay channelers because they don't have the noise. They don't have the ego in the way and interpreting and adding stuff and stuff like that. You want to get the person, the ego, completely out of it. And that, so the trance channelers, what I wanted to do with this thing was, there was an experiment done with JZ Knight that showed that when the trance channel happens, when the person is completely out of the way, the consciousness that takes over actually changes the consciousness. Now, because of COVID, we haven't been able to do it. I did one that I did, and I didn't think she was a trance channeler, and it didn't work. But it did show that the tests are very, very, very good, because we did 2 blind tests, and we sent them to 23andMe in Ireland, and they came back identical. So they had no idea that these were the same people. So we sent them in, and where we're looking for, the idea is that when you're when, like in a multiple personality disorder, they'll talk about people are able to speak languages, where their eye color changes, where their structure of their face changes and stuff like that, when the alter takes over, and that shows DNA stuff. So that was what I thought, that the blindfold and this other one, but I haven't got, and a lot of it's very hard to get somebody to go along with this, to take the test. I think this is revolutionary. It sort of blows the whole apart, that there's this physical universe, and that everything's stored in DNA, and DNA is unchangeable. And so that's the channeler thing is very important to watch channelers. And you have these different levels of channeling. So trance channeling, you even have they put all these people in labs. What's the name of Thomas Jefferson University? I actually went because I was doing a contact modality, which is called light language. You may have some people in Boulder do the light language thing. I said, this is just weird. And I said, we should put these people in MRI machines and see, because what they found is when you put mediums in an MRI machine, or people who are praying, or people who are doing any sort of paranormal stuff, the same pattern will show up. So whatever they're doing, they're not making it up, because all the mediums will show the same brain pattern. And so in trance channeling, you get this very high hertz thing. It's 40 to 50. Normal is like 20, 25. And you go into delta. Delta is like 1 or 2, and theta. But this is a very high. This is like people who have meditated for like 40 years or something like that. They get these very high gamma patterns, and this is seen in trance channeler. So Bashar, they put Bashar under the MRI and this high frequency thing. So it basically shows that there is a legitimate thing that can be studied. The people that are telling you that they're channeling or doing mediumship are doing exactly what they're doing, because they have actually been put on MRI machine. So I went for these light language and said, we should put the light language people. And I went to the guy and he said, fantastic idea. He said, okay, 10 of them, I need $50,000 plus travel and accommodation expenses, which would be like 60,000 American, which is like 100,000 Canadian. So kind of put that one on hold. They were very willing to do it, but they wanted a lot of money to put 10 people through an MRI machine. Remote viewing, everybody knows this one, this whole idea. And again, it's what they say to you in a remote viewing session is, when you do the remote viewing, do not guess. The reason they say don't guess at what it is because you're allowing the left brain to come back online. Because you're going to say, like Paul was in Egypt, they say, okay, we got a target from Egypt. The left brain will go, I know what it is. It's the king's chamber in the pyramid. I know. And it starts to guess. And everybody knows that once you guess, it's game over. What they say is just record what you're sensing, what you're smelling, what you're seeing. Don't put any a thing to it, and just tell us, and we'll analyze it later. That you got to try to they call it analytical overlay. That if you allow the left brain in there, it will kill the success of the target. And this is Hal Puthoff's wife discovered this. They looked at all the different targets, and they saw that the remote viewers were getting the shape correct, the color correct, and the texture correct. But when they tried to name it, give the function of it or the size of it, the exact size of it, they always got it wrong. So the one is right brain, the shape, color, texture is all right brain. They're getting that all right. But when they started to guess, they started to bring in the left brain. They were wrong every single time. And she's the one, that's where they come up with this thing about analytical overlay, which is the number one rule of remote viewing, is don't guess. Just record the sensations that you're getting, and don't let the left brain start to try to analyze the thing, because that's what we want to do. We want to figure this thing out, and then the left brain says, I'm so smart, I'll figure this thing out, don't you worry. And it gets in the way, and it starts the noise and cuts out the signal. Out-of-body experiences, this is done at Laurentian University. Same sort of thing, where they had these guys and they showed this the theta signal and the 40 hertz, the gamma signal, and the same thing with this the Sherman's resonance, where people were going into this sort of thing. So they've studied a lot of people who are doing these sort of things and realizing that there is actually something going on, that these people are not making this stuff up. Dreams, you get all this stuff. A lot of people will talk about dreams. Lucid dreaming is one of the most powerful you can, if you can learn how to do it. Again, you have to be able to pick up the signals, the stuff that is weird, because everybody just goes along with the fact that your dead father shows up and he shouldn't be in the dream and stuff like that. And once you can pick that up, once you're in the lucid dream state, it's like being in the state that I've been in a couple of times, where you can sort of ask whatever question you want and you will get an answer. Your left brain is completely shut down. And that's what happens in meditation, in hypnosis, and in psychedelics, is you're shutting down the ego, you're shutting down that left brain. And so dreams is very powerful. A lot of people interpret dreams. And again, it appears that the beings or the intelligence talks to us through our dreams, because and it's all done in symbols. So left brain is voice. So that's where Jill Bolte Taylor was not able to talk, because the left brain is all voice. And it's all rational analytical stuff. And right brain is all symbols. It's all colors, symbols. And that's why dreams is all very symbolic. And that's why when Jim Semivan said the phenomena, according to him, and his experience here was at the CIA, so he may know something, said it's an ultra terrestrials, which means it's here now, it's all the same thing. and that they have created us, and that they communicate to us through symbols. Because I always said with the big mystery, people always look at UFO stuff and they say, oh, did they probe you? Did it hurt? Were you scared? I always ask questions like, hey, did they have any clothes on? And I say, like, did it ever leave a mark on your body? And they go, yeah, I put triangles on my body. And it's like, well, why would a being need to put a triangle on your body? Is that like a propulsion symbol, or what the heck? And this is the whole thing. It's all these symbols that you've got to interpret the symbols, that because the phenomena is in the right brain world, it will operate in signals. If you take a look at the tests that were done, Roger Lear did the tests on the implants. He did the 17 implants. They asked him, what is common to all implants? And he said, there's only two things. All of them are right-brained creative people. And number two, all implants are on the left side of the body. The left side of the body, if you know brain stuff, the left side of the body is run by the right brain. So if the implants are on the left side of the body, whatever they're doing, they aren't interested in your rational analytical left brain. They are putting it on the left side because they're interested in your right brain. That's how they're communicating. And in Lear's book, he talked about 250, and he claimed they all had this right brain thing, and the fact that the implants are on the right side of the body.
I have a story about following dreams. Or maybe, more accurately, it's a story about finding a path to make those dreams
This is discovery
real.
of Google.
You know what it's like to wake up in the middle of the night with a vivid dream? And you know how if you don't have a pencil and pad by the bed, it will be completely gone by the next morning. I had one of those dreams when I was 23. When I suddenly woke up, I was thinking, what if we could download the whole web and just keep the links? And I grabbed a pen and started writing. Sometimes it's important to wake up and stop dreaming. I spent the middle of that night scribbling out the details and convincing myself it would work. Soon after, I told my advisor, Terry Winograd, it would take a couple of weeks for me to download the web. He nodded knowingly, fully aware it would take much longer, but wise enough not to tell me.
And the book inspired, I have 13 Nobel Prizes, and I have huge chapter on inventions. You would be surprised. Theory of relativity came in a dream. The idea of the quantum atom came in a dream. The uncertainty principle came in a daydream walking in behind the Bohr Institute. You go through them all and you see it over and over and over again, that they had this moment of inspiration where it occurred to them how this thing worked. And it seems to be a pattern. And if you can learn how to tap into it, then we can get in there and solve problems. Psychic, people know this stuff. I mean, it's the same idea where people are able to shut off and tap into fields. They're able to heal people across space. The person doesn't have to be there. And it's this idea that everything is in a field, and we're sort of misinterpreting what's going on. Mediumship was kind of interesting. A lot of mediums, people don't realize this. People ask this thing about the COVID thing. People don't realize that a lot of like mediums have had child abuse issues. And the idea that I had from that was that they're trying to shut out the outside world. They're trying to shut down this world, and suddenly they're talking to the dead grandmother. I do a whole chapter in the contact modalities about trauma. That you have, for example, near-death experience people. They have, I think in the UFO abduction world, it's 50% of people claim that they have either been healed during the experience or they can heal other people. Ray Hernandez said, if I had a buck for every experiencer who said they can do Reiki healing, I'd be a rich guy. And in the near-death experience research, you have this very dramatic trauma event. You say, this is terrible, terrible. I had to go through this death experience, whatever. 70%, I believe this figure is 70% of them claim they can heal people. And it's this idea that you're ripping the filter, this trauma thing is opening up the person to this other field. And you'll see this over and over again, that near-death experience is classic. That you have poltergeist experience, you have people who are psychic. It's the same thing as the UFO thing. And it's this trauma event, which makes me ask the question, why does an alien come into your bedroom and go, Paul, poke, 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 Paul, wake up, Paul, take a look at me. I'm an evil alien. I'm an ugly looking alien. And then you go, oh my God, an alien. And then they go, okay, go back to sleep. And they put you back to sleep. I'm thinking this may be just trauma. They're trying to get you to dissociate. They're trying to get you, because that's what happens in psychedelics, is that you have these events where they crush the ego and you get chased by a tiger and it rips you apart and stuff like that. They're taking the ego out. And that's why I said, like, when I look at the alien experience inside the bedroom, you see all these weird things that don't make sense, like aliens with hats, and they don't have bottoms of their bodies. They only have tops of the bodies. And why do they wake you up? And you see this over and over again. They wake the person up and then put them back to sleep again. Or I'll ask people often, I'll say, well, you had these beings in your room and I was terrified, absolutely terrified. And what do? I pulled they say the same thing. I pulled the covers over my head and went to sleep. I'm like, who would do that? I mean, you got beings in your room and you pull the covers over your head and go to sleep. And it's this trauma thing that you see in all paranormal phenomena, this trauma event. And I write a lot about it in Contact Modalities, that seems to be something that we see it as a bad event, but it opens up, and these may be planned events that you plan to have a near-death experience or you plan to be abducted because you're here to do something and you need that ability, the psychic ability, you need to contact the other world in order to do this. So you actually put this stone in your path, and that is not an accident. These things are happening. Or the idea, 39% of all experiencers, according to the free survey, have had a near-death experience. And they said they were going to set up a panel. I said, what do you need to set up a panel for? You're making a false assumption. You're assuming that you're abducted randomly, and you're assuming that you have a near-death randomly. Perhaps you chose both of them. So when Kathy Martin, I've asked all of them. I asked Mary Rodwell. I said, Mary, if you get the abduction experience, if you were to regress everybody back to birth, and you say, at any point in the past, did you agree to be in this situation? How many people would say yes? She said, 100%. And then I asked Kathy Martin, I said, hey, what do you think about this soul contract thing? That we're all coming in here and we're actually agreeing, whatever situation you find yourself in, you're complaining about it, whining about it, but you actually chose it. And I said, well, what about the soul contract with the abduction thing? She said, I thought about that quite a bit. So I actually had myself regressed, and I actually heard the words come out of my own mouth. I agreed to this. And this is the whole idea. So if you have a near-death experience or an abduction experience, the key is it a random event? That was the question they asked me in 2017. If it's a random world, that's one world with certain rules. But if it's not random, if it's pattern, if we are agreeing to certain things and coming in and planning our life and saying, I'm going to play this role, and I'm going to have a meeting with Paul, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to, have all these different things. If it's not random, if we're actually planning it, it's a completely different world, and you have to change everything that you believe about how things work. And we're making we've got these wrong blocks. We're assuming this. And as they told me, you just think you understand what's going on. You have not got a clue what's going on. The more I look at this phenomena, the more I look at paranormal phenomena, the more I realize that is true. I know less and less. It becomes more and more complex. And that's where I'm going with this thing. So associative disorder, I mentioned this before, that it's the same sort of thing as experiencers. They have these same sort of things where they're dissociated from their body. They're able to speak languages. Some are able to speak numbers of languages that they can't speak in their normal world. The question is, where is this stuff coming from? And it shows you that it's not a simple thing. Brain creates consciousness, random universe, random meaningless universe. You're just a biological robot. The more we look at it, the more it becomes a situation where, like at Johns Hopkins, where they do the psilocybin research and people suddenly have these mystical experiences. They have a study that was done that 73% of all the atheists who went in were no longer atheists when they came out the other side. And then, of course, the atheists said, yeah, but there's still 27% that did. It's like, well, but that's the thing. It's the experience that changes you. When you don't believe UFOs until suddenly one's in front of you, and then the world just sort of shatters in front of you, and you suddenly become a believer. It's experience that changes us. So it's very rare that you're ever going to go and convince anybody. I talk about Stanton Friedman as an example of this. I'm doing Stanton Friedman files. I've been there once now because COVID, I can't go. But I looked at it and I suddenly made a realization that Stan had spent his whole life. He argued with Shermer. He argued with the guy, the head of SETI. He argued with Menzel. He argued with all these guys, Oberg, all this sort of stuff. And he would say, I had a debate at Oxford University and 79% of the audience agreed that I was right. And the question was, but you look at all this stuff and there's huge, huge amounts. He's got millions of pages of material, but there's got to be 100,000 pages of material just on these debates and these fighting with skeptics. And the thing was, How many skeptics did Stanton ever convince? How many of them threw their hands up and said, okay, I believe you. Now I'm no longer a skeptic. Nobody. He didn't change Phil Klass. He didn't change Menzel. They all just kept going. Belief is very powerful. People got to realize it is your beliefs that are making the problems. And it's very hard. Once you're 13 years old, it's very hard. I think Einstein even said, the person spends from the time they're born to 25 inventing and being creative. And after 25, they spend the rest of their life defending what they did. I mentioned that, a dissociative disorder. Mediumship, we mentioned that. Psychedelics, I think, is the thing that may save the world. There's 40 labs now doing psychedelic research in the United States, and they're basically doing PTSD, end-of-life trauma. They've got 80% success ratio on smoking. LSD, they had the thing, one LSD dose, and 59% of all alcoholics in the 1950s never touched another drink. But with that stuff where you're doing the medical stuff, and you have it in Denver where they've sort of moved where you can do medical stuff with psilocybin, comes the mystical stuff. Now the labs are still in the materialistic world, you know, brain creates consciousness and all this kind of stuff. And it's sort of like, shut up and calculate. Just keep doing it. Let's get the patent on the psilocybin, and let's get a clinic, and let's find out how we're going to do this stuff. But they will not touch the mystical stuff, and it all involves mystical stuff. And the more mystical the experience a person has, the better the treatment works when they come out. So that's the kind of stuff they're ignoring. But there's 40 labs in the United States working on this. There's 20 in Europe. This is absolutely on fire. There's research because they realize in Canada it's actually legal for medical now. So we're moving down this path. They realize, but they're still into the thing, let's make some money from this, let's get the patents and this kind of stuff. But there is this very mystical thing that agrees with UFO people, what UFO people have been saying, what the mystical community has been saying, what Eastern religions have been saying all along. And the default mode network is shut down. They know this. They've done the test at London College where the left side of the brain is completely shut down. They thought that on psychedelics that the brain would be going crazy with all these visions and stuff. It actually shuts down. It quietens right down. And it's the same thing as meditation. It's the same thing as hypnosis. It's just quieting the mind. Chanting is one of the ones. I'm just going to quickly go through these last ones. So chanting, there's all sorts of different ways. And we used to think these people were stupid. You know, these Inuit, I mean, they're doing this stuff and they can't build a cell phone, so they got to be stupid. And now we're realizing that all these things are shutting down this sort of ego mind and creating this state of sort of trance. And in that state of trance, they enter the other realm and beings can talk to them and stuff like that. Dancing, again, it's the same thing where you're not sitting there rationally analytic. There's even a thing where if you do, Kit Green had said to John Burroughs, I said, I heard he had told him to meditate. So I said, did Kit Green actually tell you to meditate? And he said, yeah, he told me to do Vipassana meditation and some type of yoga. I can't remember what that type of yoga was. One is an active state. One is a state of sort of meditation of being quiet. When you do both, we actually know this now in the lab, when you do two of these things at the same time, this part of the brain shuts down and you have a mystical experience. So we're starting to learn these different techniques by looking at the people. And that's what I say in the UFO experience. What you have to do is you have to look at the people who are interacting with the intelligence. Forget about the lights in the sky. Forget about the metals. They're just dropping the metals to entertain us. This is not pieces falling off a flying saucer. What you've got to do is you've got to do what the government is actually doing. And that's looking at the people who have got the contact. And what they said was, because we cannot control the phenomena, we resort to watching those who the phenomena is interacting with. So when you get somebody who's very high level and is doing this, you start to watch them and you'll learn how they're making contact. They're not making it up. They have a contact. And the onus is on us to watch the people who have gotten into the field and figure out how they're doing it. Automatic writing has been used for years and years and years. Again, it's sort of, you just quiet your mind and your hand just starts to write. It's been used by a lot. Mission Rama, the people who followed the Shasta Zendra's opening and all this kind of stuff, that's all Mission Rama protocols. That's how it started with them. They're doing automatic writing, and suddenly they were talking to an alien. He said, how do we know you're an alien? They said, well, come to the desert at 8 o'clock on Saturday night and we'll show up. And all these kids went racing out there, and there's this flying saucer came, and then they started going on the flying saucer and they bring their parents out there. And this whole movement, Mission Rama movement, came out of that thing, and it all came out of automatic writing. Francis Swan was actually channeled through automatic writing. She actually taught a Navy intelligence guy. If you look at the documentary UFOs It Has Begun, that's on the internet. You can actually watch it. Robert Friend, who is the head of Blue Book at one point, he actually is in the National Photographic Interpretation Center where they analyzed all the U-2, the SR-71 photographs, and he tells the story about Francis Swan teaching this Navy intelligence guy how to channel an alien, and they make contact, and there's a bunch of CIA guys in the room, and they get in contact with this alien and say, we want proof. What do you want? We want to see you. Go to the window, and they go over the window, and this UFO flies during the day over top of the Capitol. Robert Friend, head of Blue Book, told that on camera. So that was done by automatic writing. Wilbur Smith, who ran the Canadian Government Flying Saucer Program, he and his wife, I found this when I went back later to research them, were both doing automatic writing. I was told the story that his wife actually sat in a room in Ohio at one point and took a yellow legal pad, started automatic writing, sat there for an hour, whatever it was, filled up the entire legal pad with writing in the dark. So it's, again, you can train with this kind of stuff. Here was Francis Swan doing the automatic writing. Paul and I have talked about this, the holographic breath. This is holographic breath. They discovered this by watching people coming out of LSD, that people would start, they wanted to stay in the state, so they would do this breathing thing. They would do this weird breathing thing. And then he decided to try the weird breathing thing, and they would come to the same state. So you don't need psychedelics to go in that state. You can actually do it with breath. And so it's called holographic breathing, is a technique where you can actually have these very deep mystical experiences. And it's all just done with breath. You go in this room and they do this breathing thing. Here's some of these kids where I say you got to watch these. These are the telepathic kids. This Nadia, this is a girl who is left brain is shut down. She can't talk because she's left brain shut down. She's autistic, nonverbal autistic, but she's able to be totally telepathic. They were given all these targets, what the address of the newspaper was, and there's no money around. I actually tried to get people to research this kid. There's one in the United States, Diane Hennessy Powell has. She's be now sort of out of the range, because again, once they try to teach the kid how to speak and how to write, they lose the telepathic ability, and that's, you're activating the left brain, bringing it back online, and so these kids lose this ability. But the one was Haley. Haley was famous for the test they did where she hit 162 numbers right in a row. She was just punching them into, because she can't speak, she was punching them into a little pad with numbers. She had 7 wrong the first time. So Diane Nancy Powell said, you got 7 wrong. She immediately started again and rattled off 162 and got them all right. That's the kind of thing when you see, that's pure telepathy. And you look at it and you can see the pattern. You can see actually what's going on. This is not magical. It's not mysterious. There are rules and regulations, but you've got to watch the people who are having the experiences to understand what's going on. Well, this is the savant syndrome, where they're highly telepathic. They did studies on savants, and I worked with some of these savant people. And that's the question: is when you get a savant, where is that material coming from? It's like the idea of where's Paul's first girlfriend's name coming from? Where's the sunset? Where are these images? Where are they actually? Because your head, inside your head, is dark. There is no speaker. There's no speaker. There's no speakers. There's no screen. Where's this stuff coming from? This is Diana Hennessy Powell, who is doing this thing with Haley. She talks about this telepathy thing with this girl, and couldn't get any funding. She tried to get the funding. She couldn't get funding to run these tests.
The people that would be most likely to exhibit it would be nonverbal autistic children. And it turns out that I might be right. The video you're looking at shows the experimental setup we had last spring. Haley, a 10-year-old severely autistic child, and her therapist are seated alone in the room, together at a table and separated by a tall partition that prevents eye-to-eye or physical contact. Cards with randomized numbers, words, sentences, pictures, and equations were hidden until the experiment. The therapist viewed them one by one on her side of the visual barrier and then asked Haley what she was thinking or looking at. Haley pointed with her wooden pencil inside characters on stencils with her right hand to select them, and then entered them with her left into a device that converts text to speech. You'll notice that there are no characters for division signs, equal signs, or decimal points, so the therapist had to tell Haley when these occurred. You'll also notice that her answer is 100% accurate on 18 out of 18 digits. This is just one of 10 equations that she did in a 10-minute period, with accuracy above 90% each time. This video shows Haley with the other therapist with whom she has reportedly had telepathic communication. In this experiment, the therapist was asked to write a description of the picture that she was looking at, and then to ask Haley what she was thinking. As you can see, Haley is selecting the letters, and the stencil has 26 letters, and she is just as accurate as she is with the numbers. The video you just saw was described as jaw-dropping by someone who attended the scientific conference where I presented it this summer. But I want to go back and I want to film Haley under ideal scientific conditions. There are also several other children across the globe who demonstrate a similar phenomenon. I want to go and document them as well.
And the sad part of the story, she got no funding. There's no funding for this. Nobody could care less. And I think it's extremely important. I want to get to sort of the end because we're running near the end here. If you want to do some questions, then I want to go to the end. I'll end with the Shasta stuff because the Boulder people sort of know about Shasta, and there's been a big event at Shasta, which I'll just quickly go over.
So how close are you to your closing up your talk here, Grant? We're at a time, we're at 8 o'clock where we'd like to get into questions.
Okay, let me just do the end. Let me take 5 minutes to show you the end here. Mount Shasta thing. Here's the Mount Shasta thing. There was a big event at Mount Shasta, and there's actually 2 more stories that we're following. But this happened last year. A lot of people know that there was these Zenders open here. This is the site where it all takes place on the sand flats here. I had an experience there in 2017, and Terrell, the being, told me that he knew it was coming, and this thing would happen at 9:33, and this thing happened over my head. So this is the thing. Then people who've been there know that you have these things, and you do meditations and oming and stuff, and you're trying to raise the vibration or whatever. They do this experiment here. It's called a rose ceremony. I've never done it. Apparently, this gets done all the time, where they put these roses, and they're sort of doing the a meditation, and there's a woman walking around in Spanish, and she's talking, and they say, "Can we film?" They were told that a dama would appear at the site in person. So they said, "Can we film?" And they said, "Yeah, you can film." So there's a woman in the middle of this circle who's got a cell phone camera, and she's filming. And here's what they get. There, you see this being here by the tree, and over here, these are 37 seconds apart. On this one, you can see the shadow on the tree. This being is projecting on the shadow on the tree. So this thing shows up on the camera. We're getting some de-blur stuff because in front of this tree, you can't really see it from this photograph, but in front of this tree, it appears there is a portal. One is circular, one is square. We're getting some de-blur stuff. We're going to get some analysis done on that. So that's how this thing starts. That's during the day. They have an event at the bottom of the hill in a store. There's all these bizarre things happening. The phenomena actually follows the guy home after this event. This Adama follows this guy home. We're trying to interview this guy. All this stuff's happening in his house. This is Adama who said he would appear at the site. I knew that this was supposed to happen. I didn't realize that it actually happened. End of show. Okay, so what happens? I'll tell you, and then we'll go to questions. So here's what happens at the very end. There's people. Most of the people have gone down at night. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. They've gone down to cabins and motels in the city, the town at the bottom of the hill. And what happens is they're having a birthday party. They're sitting in that open field. It's called the Sand Flats, and suddenly one woman is intuitive. She says he's here. They're here. And the people say, "How do you know?" She says, "I just know they're here. I know they're here." And suddenly this thing lights up in the forest. And then she says, "Look, they're there." And then the other people say, "Well, no, it's probably just someone in a forest. Somebody's in a campsite." She said, "No, it's them. I know it's them." And she said, "They want us to come. They told us to come." And she said, we can't come. It's too dangerous. It's too dark to walk across the field. And then and we interviewed these people. We're going to release the tape. We had 3 of the 9 witnesses. They say, "Okay, we'll come to you." and it was like a herd of elephants coming across the field. They heard these elephants coming across, and suddenly there was a Dhamma and a couple other beings, and these people were scared. So they all held hands, and they were in this thing. They started holding hands, and they started to om. They started to be levitated into the air. 9 people, and they were in a zendra because they said they were oming, and it sounded like they were underwater. That's a classic symbol that you're inside a zendra. Your voice sounds like it's underwater. So they were describing this, and then I asked the one guy, I said, so how many beings were there? And he said, a couple hundred. I said, a couple hundred? And he said, there was as many beings as there was trees in the forest. Etheric beings, energy beings, and a Dhamma they could sort of see, but these others were energy beings. And I said, how long did it go on for? He said, I have no idea. It may have gone on for 2 hours. They went into when it was over, they went to their campsites, to their tents, and they said they maintained that these beings were still walking around. They could see shadows. They could hear people walking around during the night. So that just happened at Shasta this year, and we're still trying to do the other 9 witnesses. But it's the best story I've seen of contact in 46 years. Amazing story. So we'll just go to questions.
Okay, I'm going to comment here, Grant. It's been interesting to hear how your message and your focus has changed over the years. It similarly mirrors BoulderExo's in that at one point we were looking at phenomena and trying to decide whether it was credible or not. And now we're looking at consciousness and what does it mean and what is our place in the universe. And this whole series you've just talked about are all these different ways of knowing things. And they're all paranormal. And so how do you identify when you experience something? How do you differentiate between dreams, between visions, between DMT experiments? Well, you might know when you're doing that, but what do you do to understand what the source is of the information that you're getting, or how to identify what modality you're experiencing at the time?
What you look at is John Hopkins has a list of states of mystical experience. So that's what you're looking at. You're looking at these states, and it's a noetic experience. So it's not, it's defined as a noetic experience, which William James said means that it comes with knowledge. So when you have these experiences, when I had the experience in 2012, so this thing came into my head, said the Canadian government said in this document, mental phenomena is involved. Eric Walker said, what do you know about ESP? Ben Rich said, what do you know about ESP? It put these 3 things in my head at the same time. And it was like, oh, that's how it works. It comes, noetic material comes with absolute certainty. There's no question, you know this is real. And it's this noetic quality. So if you look up, and that's what happened to Edgar Mitchell. When Edgar Mitchell was coming back from the moon, he has this experience where he suddenly realizes everything's one, and he gives up his entire career. It's that dramatic. Or people will say in an experience, whatever type of modality it was more real than the real world. The physical world is the illusion. You hear this over and over and over. So people think it's like a sort of a thing, a mystical. Like when I was in this experience, where I had it was a spiritual experience, and I knew as soon as it started, it was a spiritual experience. I've never had a spiritual experience. It came, it was in my body, it went bigger, 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 and then they sort of wiped out what had happened, and then it sort of ended. It lasted about 6 seconds, and I knew it was a spiritual awakening. It was an ascension. It was something, I don't know what it was, but it was dramatic, and I knew this is some sort of spiritual trigger thing. And I could actually see myself, and it was in my body, and it was sort of imprinted, and then it just sort of faded away. It sort of left. And then this experience of unconditional love. So people will describe this, but when you're in it, you know what it is. It's coming in waves. It's coming over my right shoulder, and it's coming around and around, and it's getting more and more intense and more. And suddenly I'm in it, and I realize I've studied this my whole life. Pay attention, Grant. What does this feel like? Like I'm trying to take notes, because I know it's going to disappear. They make you forget all this stuff. You're not allowed to take it out. So I'm trying to remember, what is this like? And I remember it coming in waves, and it was getting more and more intense. It was like an actual thing. So this is the thing, that when you have these experiences, you know it's not like a dream. It's completely different than a dream. Or like when I had the experience in 2017, where I get the 20 things. I knew as soon as it happened, get a pen. And it's terribly cold out. I got my glove off and I'm writing. I knew, write this down, write this down. I knew that this was real material. It's not just an idea. It's an idea, as the noetic, the 7 states of mystical experience will show. The people will describe it as one of the most powerful experiences of the life. I've had probably the one with where I was pulled up into heaven or wherever that thing was or what was going on. It was more dramatic. People will say in these experiences, it is one of the 70% of people will say it was the most important experience in their life, more as equivalent to the birth of a child or the death of a parent. It was that powerful. And it was like nothing. There was nothing that I've ever experienced that came anywhere close to that experience in terms of importance or validation or whatever. It's just like you go like, wow, this is completely different. And that's this idea of noetic. And that's why they started the Noetic Institute. So noetic is different than a good idea. Noetic it comes with this knowledge that this is real information. It's like you're getting it from God. You're getting it from somebody that this is really important. Write this down. Like that's what Einstein said. When Einstein had the dream of the toboggan, what he said was, I knew I had to understand that dream. In fact, you could say, and I would say, that my entire career was based about a meditation on that dream. It comes that important, like right there, this is important. And that's the difference. Not a good idea. It's noetic. That's the term that is used for it.
I'll share one perspective here with 2 experiencers that have been in direct contact with other beings. And when they talked about their anxiety, it wasn't fear of being hurt. After much questioning, it turned out to be that they had anxiety about losing their awareness of who they were. The field of energy was so powerful that they felt like they might be subsumed and lose awareness to come back. And so maybe a trick at that point would be to really focus on grounding into the earth. Before anybody leaves here, we're going to have another 25 minutes of Q&A and then end at 8:30. I wanted to make sure that everybody knows that next month's presentation will be Paula Harris, who will be sharing revelations of an historic ET retrieval crash case of greater significance than Roswell. It's not well known yet, and she will be talking about that. That Zoom meeting will begin at 6 p.m. Mountain Time on May 28th. So before you forget it, mark your calendars right now.
Can I make a comment on that?
What's that?
Can I make a comment? Because I do the theory of wow thing, and I do the crash thing. And if you look at the last Bigelow interview, they asked him about Roswell, and he said, yeah, Roswell's real, but he said, there's other crashes. There's one in Russia, there's one in China, there's one in South America. I think they're seeding the planet, and that's the whole thing. Is this actually a crash, or are they dropping this stuff on purpose? If you look at this Tyler D guy, the top guy from NASA, who I've actually met this guy, I know he is. Whitley Strieber was given, the aliens gave a message to take to this guy from NASA. I know who the guy is. And when he took the people to the field, there was a field where there's a crash. He took Dan Pasolka and Gary Nolan to this field, and they were blindfolded, so they couldn't tell where they were or whatever. And they called it the gifting field. And so this is the whole thing I say about the metals. Everybody's all excited about the metals. And it's like, well, the metals, do you think that a UFO comes across the galaxy and then little pieces start falling off the flying saucer? They're dropping this stuff. That's why I said to hell put off. Hell, this is support stuff. You had this with Uri Geller. Uri Geller was there, and Edgar Mitchell's pin, Air Force pin, shows up in his ice cream, and he bites his lip, and then they go back to the lab, and the back half of the pin falls in behind Hal Puthoff, and Uri Geller's in the other room, and that kind of stuff. So that's what the idea is. What is actually going on here? So we sort of get wrapped up in the metal stuff. In fact, I had a message. It's funny. I say the universe has got a sense of humor. When you're at this level, they said to me, somehow the thing of disclosure came up, and they said to me, so what are you going to do if there's disclosure and the government actually says what's going on? Are y'all going back to church? That's what they said. And that's the thing. It's like we get wrapped up, and so we got this stuff where Desta and I found a piece at the University of Tucson in James McDonald's files from 1939 of this object that came flying out of the sky, and it was red hot. It's always the same story. It's red hot. The guy had to wait for her, and they pulled it out of the garden with this thing, but all the pieces are different and they're all really weird. Like they have weird isotopes. This one was 99% metal, and people said there's nothing at that in 1939 it came out of the sky that was 99% metal. There's no way. And so it's this weird stuff where they're making you go, what's going on here? Like, what's it's like the lights in the sky. Like, what is this? Like, what is this crash stuff? And you hear these stories that they've got a craft that they think can fly. So what does that mean? They've got a craft and they can't even turn it on. And so are they actually crashing? Are they dumb aliens? Or like people will talk about, I have a friend here that a lot of experience will talk about, oh, the aliens are stupid. They put you back in your bed and they put your shirt inside out and backwards. So I had the one guy here and I said, that happen to you too, didn't it? He said, yeah, let's go picture it. He said, it happened to me twice. And so we have this idea, well, the aliens are stupid. They can't even put your clothes on right. No, they're putting your clothes on inside out and backwards because they want you to go, no, that wasn't a dream. No, that was real. Like, and that's why they put marks on your body, because they want you to go, yeah, that really happened. You had that dream that you thought that was good. Yeah, that would really happen. This wasn't a dream. And so it's all these signaling that I think they're doing. That's what Bob Bigelow said after Wrap Up Skinwalker Ranch. They said, what was it all about? Said it's all messaging. It was all messaging, the whole thing.
Okay, Grant, we've got a few questions here on chat. Yep. Kathy Mason, are you there? If you are, unmute yourself and ask your own question. And here she comes. Caught you.
Hi, Grant. I saw you on Alan Steinfeld's show the other night, and
you must have a big audience. You're the fourth person that's told me. Oh, I saw you on there.
Yeah. Well, I had him on my show right after that, and he was still raving about it. So you really, it was really cool. Anyway, I have several questions. One of them is
do one question, Kathy. And
okay. You keep like what you're saying. I've had experiences, and I always call it they, or I don't have a name for the beings that are helping me. Yeah. But where does ascension fit with all this? How do you see? I mean, they're dropping clues. They're giving us more data. I mean, even X-Files has stuff in it. I mean, all this stuff is in the field. So how do you see, because you're saying they and it, and who's running the show then?
I think that's what the idea I had. If you go to, this book is coming out called Tejabar, this Mark Sims, this big business guy, there's a chart. I actually have this podcast, Paranormal UFO Consciousness Podcast. I have the interview with him, and there's a link on there where he shows this chart, where they give him this chart of the ascension, how you go through these different levels and you get up to where you're creating galaxies and stuff like that. And that's this concept that there is a God, there's a source or whatever, but he's not really doing anything because he's one. He can't, when you're one, there's no duality. You can't tell anything. You don't even know. You're just one. And it's when you break the duality and these people start creating things. That was given to me. It was given to him too. This idea that and you hear in Michael Newton, like the guy says, I'm building a rock. And then Newton says, you're building a rock. Well, I'm not very advanced. Or you're building a little animal. And they talk about these spirit people. And that's 7,000 people all telling these stories. So that's why I think it's this ascension thing. But it's still the part to remember is it's all here. It's all now. It's moving up and down. Almost like the idea that when you die, you don't go anywhere. You go in yourself. When you have an out-of-body experience, you go in yourself. Or Deepak Chopra summed it up. Everything is an action inside consciousness. There is only consciousness, and we have this illusion that there's all this stuff out there, and it's all within ourselves. So the ascension would be in ourselves, that we progress as we evolve. We move to these higher levels and get different patterns and come in, and we go through this pattern of karma or whatever you want to call it.
Okay, but okay, so there's a plexiglass chessboard like Star Trek had that James Kirk and Spock used to play in, and we're on that. And so you're saying that somebody made a move above and then they drop the piece of metal, or they give you a near-death experience, or they, that's why how much of it is us doing it to ourselves?
Well, you're in control of everything. If you read Dr. Michael Newton, you'll see these things where you agreed to come in, and you
Yeah.
wanted that you agreed, you made a deal with the Greys. So people say the Greys are bad guys. I said, well, what happens if you wake up after you die and you're a Grey? Now you're a bad guy. You have an agreement with a Grey to come in. That we're gonna. That's why I say. Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage. All the men, women, and aliens are but actors. We have our entrances and exits, and each man plays many roles. So we may be in a deal where we came in and we agreed to have an abduction. We agreed to find a piece of metal.
Okay.
And this thing, is it randomly happening, or are we behind it? But we're always the person planning. We can't say, I got a bad deal. Everybody's choosing their karma.
Right,
Everybody's choosing
right.
their path.
I'm not debating that. I'm asking about like the Kali Yuga and all of the, I mean, the ancients already knew that we were in a time of transition and that we were going to have more photonic light hitting the earth and that we were ascending. Who's running that program?
I say it's all run by source, but it's the beings that are creating. They told me, they said, create a story. It's all about stories. Create a story. It's like, and it's like, you want me to make up a story? It's like really weird. And it's all these things underneath that are creating this stuff. And there is somebody running it. That's why I asked that they at one point, I said, are you God? One time I asked them, I said, like they keep giving me this thing, like I'm ego boy, like you think you know everything and stuff like that. And I said, okay, so you tell me what's going on. And then they say, we don't know. I said, well, come on, you don't know. And they said, we only know what's at our level and below us. And then I realized, like, no, I'm not really talking to God. And it just blew me away. I said, you don't know. Come on, are you kidding me? And it's this idea. So there's whatever level you're at, you play that role, and that at the top there is something, but I don't think it does the creation. I think we are the ones that are creating the story. We're creating these things, and that's like entertaining God. It's like they had this expression, God created man because he likes stories. And this idea that we're just, these beings that I'm interviewing on Tuesday say the same thing. It's all illusion. It's all a story. Quit going. We can take you to our planet and play the story that we're going to go to my planet or wherever. That's why I like them. They're on this thing. It's all illusion. It's all story. Or people will describe that your experience, they just take it and throw it out. It doesn't mean anything. And these weird sort of things, we are in a play. We've come in. You got to realize your reincarnation. You've come in probably for a reason. You got to figure out what your reason is and deal with it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you so much. I have about 10 more questions. I'll have to.
You can send it by email. I'll try to address them by email or.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
Jan
you so
Fonda's
much.
got a question here.
Thank you.
If you'd like to unmute, Jan.
How many more questions? I'll try to be brief here.
Okay, my question is, I saw in your introduction, you had something about a connection between American presidents and aliens, and I was really curious about that.
I spent, when I had my UFO sighting in 1975, I thought I had discovered I was going to be, sell 1 million books. I had discovered this whole thing. I went around to this small town, interviewed all these people. I tried to get a book published. The local publisher said, Mr. Cameron, you may believe in this kind of stuff. Count me among the unbelievers. I was floored and never looked at sightings after. I said, it's a total waste of time. I started to say, when I saw this thing the second night, it came directly at me the second night, very low to the ground, and it made this turn and head off in the north. And I looking at it, and I said, that could be an extraterrestrial. That is so weird. And then I thought, well, what's it doing? It's not doing anything. It's just flying along. It's not. And then I said, what's going on? Like, what's this thing doing? And I said, nobody cares about the sightings. I said, somebody's got to know what that thing is. I'm just a little guy from Winnipeg. I'm no big, professor or anything. But somebody's got to know. So I went after the Canadian government. That led to go after the former president of Penn State University, who had 14 honorary doctorate degrees. Bugged him to try to get the answer. He was going to put his stuff in the presidential files. And that's when I went to the Truman Library, and I was at the Truman Library trying to get Walker's files. And it was that point I said, hey, the president's the most powerful guy in the world. He's got to know what's going on here. So I said to the archivist, I said, hey, so what do you got on UFOs? And the guy, and they didn't have anything. And then down the road from the Truman Library in Kansas is the Eisenhower Library. So I went to the Eisenhower Library and I said, hey, what do you got on UFOs? I'm figuring like the president's got to know what's going on here. And they didn't have anything either. And that was the conclusion I had, is that some presidents are curious, and like Obama said, he did try to figure it out. But I was trying to figure out, the president's got to know. So what's the president withholding? How many have had sightings? A lot of them were interested in stuff. And I realized there really are no documents that keep this away from the president. They really don't. And I think the secret that they're withholding, seriously, the secret they're withholding is what I'm telling you tonight. This thing is 1,000 times more complex than people think it is. They don't know. They know, yeah, this is real. We are interacting with somebody, and it is going after the military. It is very upset with the military, and it's engaging them, it's prompting them and stuff like that. But you don't want to put the president of the United States up and say, oh, these things are here, and they can do whatever they want. We don't. Jim Semivan was asked one time, who's running the thing? They were indicating who in the government is running the thing. He said, they are. That's the story. The phenomena is running the show. Nothing happens without the phenomena. And that's something the government doesn't want people to know, that they have no control over this thing. This thing is messaging. It's bringing in stuff. And so the president, I gave up because there's no records except for the Clinton library. There's a lot of material in the Clinton library because Hillary was very much in this and Rockefeller went there to try to get answers. But other than that, there's really nothing. Obama said he had gone for the secret, and then he said, I can't talk about it. And at one point he said, the aliens won't let us talk. And he laughed. And I think there may be some truth to that they just don't know. And they're not going to come out and say, we don't know. So they're trying to get this funding through Congress now. They're trying to get the white world involved to try to put in more input as to figuring this thing out. Because in the black world, it's so segregated that nobody's talking to anybody and they can't figure this thing out. They know it's real. They may know little pieces of it, but I think that's the big secret. They have this craft intact and they cannot turn it on. Because if you've followed my research, I've got 50 people who have flown the craft and they all say the same thing. You put your hand on a panel, you put your hand on a ball, you become one with the craft, and the craft is alive, and whatever you think is what the craft does, and it will go anywhere in the universe, do whatever you want to do. It is consciousness, the bottom line. And so you can have a craft, but unless you've got a consciousness interface to turn it on, you ain't even starting the craft up. That's what they're hiding. The president may know that this is for real, that there's stuff, but they really don't have any answers to what it is. And I'm showing you tonight, it is very, very complex. The more I look at it, the more I think it's not going to turn out to be, as Jacques Vallée, I'd be very surprised if this turns out to be extraterrestrials flying in from another planet. And I started on the extraterrestrial path, the more I look at it, the more it's consciousness, the more it's here now. It's these ultra-terrestrials, they've been around, they tell us all the time, we have been here forever, which means it's our airspace, it's not your airspace. And we are controlling the whole show. They've been here. These beings I'm interviewing on Tuesday said, you are the visitors. We've been here forever. You're only here for a couple of years, then you're leaving. We are the people. We are the ones with the planet. We're going to protect the planet.
Man, I couldn't have asked for a better wrap-up statement that you just made. It's a perfect segue to closing the night out. So we really want to thank you so much for giving your very valuable time and all your insights. I might reveal a little bit about your ability in the ESP realm. You talked about many ESP people. The last time that you and I were together in Laughlin conference, Russell Targ had an ESP trainer.
Oh yeah.
And I prodded you to keep trying to see how far you could go. And you were one of the first people in quite a while that got 6 right in a row. So that gal that got 18 on that video, she better look behind her shoulder because you're right behind her.
I forgot about that story. That was bizarre.
For those of you who didn't get enough, you will be able to find Grant's interviews on YouTube, and his books are at Amazon. Plus also it's allconnected.weebly.com. If you want that again, you can write me. And I will close then by saying, well, Paula's talking again on May the 28th. If you noticed that she wasn't with us tonight, that's because she's in Phoenix with Stephen Greer. So we got quite a family here and a lot of interconnections, and we all are one, as you have said. So Edgar Casey, when he was doing his readings, his wife would wait for his eyes to start wiggling, and then she would talk to him and hold him in an intermediate state before he fell asleep or woke up, and would ask questions. And if you've got a partner you're sleeping with, you can actually practice that a little bit yourself, and you might be surprised by what happens. So you might want to put an audio recorder by your bed tonight in any event, in case your dreams reveal any further insights. With that, I'm going to say on behalf of Paula, Ross, Julia, Cynthia, Marianne, and me, thanks for joining us. and good night.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Beautiful. And watch for my blindfold thing. We'd like to have some people try it.
Oh, I want to tell them about the book.
Oh, yeah.
Do it quick.
Thanks, Brenda.
Grant.
Thank you, Grant. It was really, really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, we're still here. Go ahead.
Thanks, Grant. Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne.
Okay. Beautiful.
Grant, I wanted
Thank
to
you.
tell you about the guy, when you're talking about the boy who can see without his eyes.
Yep.
There's a man who was the president of ICEM, the International Society for the Study of Subtle Energy and Energy Medicine.
Yeah.
Dr. Jacob Lieberman.
Yeah.
And I'm looking here, you can see it. And he was an eye doctor of ophthalmology. And he had such poor vision. He was legally blind without his glasses. Yeah. And so he did meditations for, I don't know how many months. And then one day he realized that he could have his eyes closed and he could see. Yeah. And so from that day on, he threw away his glasses, his contacts. He never needed glasses again. And he was seeing from a place that was his consciousness and not his eyeballs. And when he actually had got back in the machine to do the test, thinking that he had 20/20 vision, he got back and his measurement was still just as bad as it was before, but he could see perfectly clearly. And
that's where we have to pay attention to these people. Yeah, Ring actually, the near-death guy did a study as well of blind people with near-death experiences, and I think it was 17 out of 32 could see during, and they'd been blind from birth in near-death experiences they could describe. That's where we got to go with anomalies, is that tells you, hey, something's wrong here, and if we can figure out what's going on, we can teach blind people to see. But you can't get anybody to put money in it. You can't. People aren't really interested. They're interested in lights in the sky and reptilians. Chris Bledsoe, the story he tells now, where he wanted to do a movie. Tom DeLonge wanted to do a movie, and then Tom DeLonge says, "Let's put some reptilians in the movie." And then Chris Bledsoe said, "I'm out of here. Bye."
Right.
He turned down huge money, but that's people want entertainment. And when you get these really serious things where it looks like we can actually discover something, the scientific community, they're busy doing other things. They're not interested. So where do we go? I mean, we realize there's stuff that we can learn and help people, but as far as I can see, there's no real move inside academia to try to solve these problems.
Yeah.
I see that some people are just not leaving. If you want to get another quickie in, or go ahead and unmute all yourselves, talk a little bit back and forth, but we have to go have some dinner. So you got a couple more minutes.
Paul, this is Ross. So since your first girlfriend was mentioned, who was your first girlfriend? Who was that person?
You know, I was thinking about that. Yeah, I was thinking about that myself, and it probably wouldn't be in my best interest to talk about it tonight. But,
well, she was mentioned, at least few times. So I wonder, she must have been an important person. That's all.
Hey, I'm gonna tell Grant. There's
Marianne, who was your first?
a lot of things you're talking about are just bottom line stuff out of the Course in Miracles.
Yeah,
Course in Miracles has all those non-dual stuff. It just goes hand in fist with it. It's all the same stuff. All the mystical teachings all say the same thing.
Yeah, everybody's tapping in the same thing. That's where Desta was doing the thing where she's channeling, and it keeps going oneness, and she has to keep putting capital on it. And it's the same thing. It's like oneness. And after a while, you go like, it's the same message every time. Everybody's got the same message, and it is. It's the same message.
It is. All the stuff that's right on is all saying the same thing.
Or
the message.
Or the law of one, the book you're talking about, the law of one, all these things where these people said that the book was channeled. It was given to me. I didn't write it. It was given to me. And it's this people in the field loading this stuff, and we are the messengers.
Now, when you're talking about
Uh-oh.
What'd you do?
She's frozen.
Still here. Julia's having an intervention.
Maybe it's my I can hear you for a while.
Paul?
I don't know if this
Yes.
This is Gene.
Hi.
And Marianne, when we went to Egypt, We were in a class with Jacob Lieberman because he was giving a class. So that was our first experience with someone who could see without having vision.
He saw through his skin, actually,
He what?
through his skin.
Yeah, he
His
saw
whole
through his
body,
skin. Yeah.
His whole body could see. That's the way he described it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also another story that was told by the guy who used to run UFO Congress. Can't remember his name. He's a very famous guy. He's totally blind. He's been blind for 25 years. Everybody when Congress knew this guy was blind. He was at one of Paula's events and he was in the experiencer thing. And he starts telling this story that they go to Chicago for some operation or something. They're going to try some revolutionary thing or whatever. And he's there. And then he says, suddenly he's in the restaurant and he said, suddenly I could see. And his wife said, you cannot. He said, yeah, I could see. And she said, well, okay, what's the waitress wearing? He said, she's got this brown apron on or whatever. She said, you can see. And he looked around and he said there was a bunch of reptilians in the restaurant. And the one looked over him and said, okay, so now you can see. Now go tell somebody. And then he said they left the restaurant and went into the hotel. It was connected to the hotel. He said by the time he got to the hotel, his sight was gone again. And then when he went back to the airport, the people were coming off the plane and suddenly his sight came back again. And it looked like the people had been abducted. Their clothes were all sort of weird coming off the plane. But this is a famous guy. And when he was telling the story, I said, have you ever told the story in public? He said, no, I've never told the story in public. But it was again the same thing. This guy everybody knew this guy had been blind for 25 years. He said I had perfect sight. And these reptilians were in the restaurant.
Oh.
Here's your picture.
Yeah, good story.
And that's the thing, to get the message. So they said, now you see, go tell someone. It's the same as Strassman, who did the experiment on the DMT at the university in New Mexico. He has this experience doing DMT. He's hiding it. It was him. But the beings come out of this waterfall of fire. They come walking out and they said, now you see, now you see, now you see, now you see. That's why he did the research, because he had this experience. And they were basically prodding him. Okay, now you've seen, now go and do some research and try to figure this thing out.
One of our speakers at SSE, he witnessed what he would call a reptilian at a golf table at dinner with 3 other people for an hour. And he reports that he could see that individual and none of the other 3 could see the same individual.
Yeah.
It apparently you can have preferential ability or they can make it available to you in some manner. And of course, the joke was, who in the hell are you going to tell? Who's going to believe you?
Yeah. That's what Kid Green talked about that in the study they're doing for experiencers. He said, and he quotes this, that people will be in the event and they'll see totally different things. The same as when Paula was in the Zendra, she was hearing him talk in some foreign language. This other person was getting a download about personal stuff. Everybody had a different experience inside that Zendra. And you get this over I got a big business guy here in Winnipeg, and he told the story. He said he was on his he lives on the river, and he said I was on the deck, and this ball of fire is going along the river, coming along, and he calls his wife, get out here, get out here. She comes walking out, and she's looking at it, and they're both looking at it. And he said for years he told this story, and then one time he's at a party and he's telling this story, and then he said my wife was with me and she saw it, and she said, what did you see? And he said, oh, it was this ball like fire, like gas on fire. He said it was not. It was a flying saucer. And he said it was. And so he had told this story for years and they'd never talked about it. And she saw a completely different thing than he had seen. You see this all the time, that people are seeing, and they said it had to do with your belief system, that if you were religious, you'd see one thing, and if you were different, it had to do with your belief system as to what you would see. And that's what John Wheeler said, the guy who won the Nobel Prize. He said it's a participatory universe, this idea that nothing comes into the physical world until it's seen. That Einstein was so upset about. I'd like to know the moon was behind me when I'm not looking. It's this idea that we are participating in what we're looking at.
Let me add that when I heard an ET speak one time, what I thought I heard was music. And I couldn't make any sense out of that until I realized my brain was giving me the closest approximation to what it understood, which was a whole bunch of frequency all at one time. And so I saw an image that, or felt something that was the extent of what my brain and mind could handle at that time. Not that I was afraid of it, I just had nothing to relate.
Yeah, we are part of it.
Yeah.
Hey, last comment, Deb.
Well, I just had a weird, it stays with me. I agree with Julia.
in some of that, this is a lot like some of the healing stuff that I'm more familiar with. But one of the things in your book, Rendlesham Enigma, you have what I call the glyphs. Like you say, those pieces of metal that come down often have those glyphs.
Yeah.
And what about having people sort of meditate on them, like downloads, like people are getting downloads of energy codes, or, people are getting codes, and I see them as sort of that glyph, like what you're, was shown. And have you tried that to sort of use that as a gateway to stimulate it or to activate those parts of the brain that you were talking about?
Okay, well, the glyphs were Jim Peniston that touched them. And then, when he touched the glyphs on the craft, that's when he got the download. And they're writing a whole second book on the download, just the download of the stuff they've got, all the mathematics, how it fits in with the pyramids and the triangles and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, this is the thing that, or Whitley Strieber says he was shown the writing, and he said, "What are you showing me this stupid writing for? I can't understand it anyway." And he said, "Yeah, you can. Not on your conscious level, but your subconscious level, you know exactly what it says." And so it's this idea of trying to get into the subconscious, whether you're using meditation or whatever, and that when you're ready, it will sort of open up. Yeah, people will describe this all the time, that the writing is very important. That then, or the woman, if you've seen the one with the Ariel School. She's Emily Trim. She's from Canada. She's the one that does all the painting. She's done hundreds of paintings. She had a second encounter in Hamilton, Canada. They came. She thought they were God. She was on her knees praying, and these beings were in her kitchen. Her life just fell apart. She started painting, and if you look at her paintings, she has all these alien writing in the painting. And she said the alien writing is the most important part of the painting. She's done hundreds of paintings, obsessed with this painting thing where she's doing this. And this is one of the kids that was at Ariel School. She was 8 years old when this happened. And she was getting these rapid image things coming into her head. She was getting the ones with the technology. You've got technology, but you can do better. And at the end, there was this giant explosion. And the girl beside her was getting these rapid image things that were showing environmental damage. And that's, if you take a look at healing, you look at the Bankston method. When I saw the Bankston method, I said, I know what they're doing. The Bankston method is you memorize 20 ego images. I want a new car. I want a motorhome. I want this. I want that. And you memorize them, and then you start to flip them. And you go faster and faster. And they teach you to do 1,000 or 2,000 times a second, these images in your head. And what it's doing is it's taking the ego, and the ego goes, that's so cool. Look at that motorhome. And it shuts that off. And that's the one healing modality. And he's the head of the the association there, Bankston. And he's saying you're getting the healer out of the way. So the left brain is being occupied. Go for coffee, and now the healing can get done, and it can go anywhere in the world. And they call it the Cadillac of healing. They can do cancer. There's someone that claims it can do cancer.
And I think though he's doing something else, because it's image recycling in the mind, and so you're stimulating that pineal gland at the same time. Yeah. And all those images are what you desire. So you're also stimulating the heart. And so you're getting the ego out while you're stimulating, the pituitary pineal, and while your heart is being activated.
But when Bankston points it out, he always says, because people, you get people who are very sort of high spiritual energy in their room, and everybody puts on their list, I want to cure cancer. I want to save the world. And he said, get that off your list. That's not what we want. We want ego images. That's really upset with people. So somebody's playing us music.
Right. And so
the message is in the music. Or so they tell me.
Okay.
Are we raising hands, or what are we doing
Just
now?
go ahead and make a comment here.
Okay. Yeah, so I was just, I'm spackling my bathroom right now, so I'm listening from afar. But so about the symbol downloads, and Grant, I shared with you the drawings that I'm doing now that are a result of symbol downloads and sacred geometry and stuff like that. What am I supposed to be doing with this stuff? It's just like coming out so rapidly, and I have so many of them, and it's like, I don't know what it means, but
everybody says the same thing. I mean, it's like their idea that they say is that it triggers, even though you don't understand it, it will trigger. It has emotion in it. And that's what they're claiming, because everybody says the same thing. Like Whitley Strieber, like, why are you showing me this stuff? I mean, I can't read what you're doing, but it's the idea. It's not just writing. It has emotion. It has, just by the sight of it, it's passing messages. And so you just go along with what consider yourself lucky and just keep doing whatever it appears they're giving you, and assume that it has some message that they are behind, that the people behind it has some meaning. It may not have meaning for you and I, but they want you to do it for a particular reason that we don't yet understand why they're doing this, or why they're, because it's all messaging. They're doing these weird things because they never give you a direct message. Like, why do they drop a crop circle? Why don't they just tell you what's going on? Because they want you to sort of use your mind and make you think. They never give you the answer. They're covering up as bad as the government is.
Somebody had said to me, because time isn't linear, that the drawings that I'm doing could be being accessed from the future and used in the future already now.
Yeah. The only thing I would worry about that is who's telling you that, because you are the person people got to listen to, because people will analyze. Because I talk in the book, in the contact modality, I talk about the left brain interpreter. There is a thing, and neurology doesn't want to talk about. It's called the left brain interpreter. That when something doesn't make sense, the left brain will come up. It will just make up stuff. And they did these experiments where they proved it, and it was always wrong. And it would never change its mind once it made a thing. So if something really weird happens, like this, somebody sees the symbols, then they say they're rational, analytical, and say, oh, it's this or it's that or whatever. You got to be careful that you're not listening to somebody who's using their left brain to interpret this thing. That's why I think you got to listen to the experiencers that are talking, and ignore the people who are trying to do the analysis. The people who are having the experiences are the only ones who should be talking to. Because everybody else is just guessing. You're just sort of talking out of your ego and think you're smart and you're figuring it out. So you got to watch who you're allowing to interpret that stuff. The experiencers are the most important people around. It's the Super Bowl. You guys are the Super Bowl. You are playing on the field in the Super Bowl. Whatever's going on, you're in the field. They have got you. You are their messenger. You are playing on their team. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but I would avoid people who are trying to rationally analyze what's going on, because they don't know. They weren't there. The people having the experiences, interacting with the phenomena, the intelligence, are the only people we should be listening to.
Is there ever any concern that whatever's coming through is not positive, and that we're being manipulated in not a good way?
I say there is only one thing. There is only consciousness. There is no, to me, it's all experience. There's no good or bad. We project it. We can project, if we can build a house in the physical world, we can build a house. We can create negative energy through suicide, through all sorts of stuff. We are part of it. In psychedelics and in lucid dreaming, it's the same rule, that when you come up against something you think is very evil, and I've been in hell 3, 4 times, 10 times hell. Suicidal position where it's like the only way out of this thing is, and they make you think this thing's going to last forever. And the thing, what they want you to do is this surrender. Is you think it's really evil, and I have to meld with this thing. I have to join this thing. And as soon as you make that decision to surrender, it's boom, it's gone. It does. And then in the lucid dreaming, and that's Stanford University in the labs, where they had the people in the labs, the rule was, if you come up against whatever it is, an evil alien, evil spirit, whatever, in the lucid dream, you are to walk towards the same at Johns Hopkins. If a person's having a bad trip, they grab you by the hand. That's why they have trainers. They have people in the room. They grab you by the hand and they say, do not walk away. Go towards it. It's okay. Nothing's going on. Walk towards it. If you walk away, it's to face that you are the one that put that in front of you. And that's the whole idea, that it's always me. It's me setting up the thing. We have this idea that separation. There's me, and then there's these evil things and good things, and they're influencing me, and I'm like a cork in the stream, and I got a raw deal that referees against me, and my mother-in-law's against me or whatever. And when you take responsibility and say, I own this thing. I did whatever. I did the lucid dream. I did the psychedelics. I own this thing. I created this thing, and I'm going to live with it. I guarantee you it goes away like that instantaneously. because it's surrender. And that's what we were doing is we're saying, oh, we're going to shoot these things down. And it's like, nobody's shooting anything down. These guys are running the show. We're into this separation thing. It's me versus you, good versus bad. Even the idea of the aliens, people want to class them. The worst aliens are the black reptilians. Then there's the grays, they're like the intruders. Then there's the human aliens, the Caucasian guys, they're the good guys. And the highest beings are the ascended masters, the great white brotherhood. And I'm going, doesn't this sound like something that we've sort of made up in terms of and to me it's, we are part of what we have, especially if you have the idea that you made a pact to come in here. Then you got to realize that you may be in a pact with whatever it is you're dealing with, whether it's an alien or a higher self or whatever, that this may be part of what you agreed. And it's like, wake up, come on. And they're trying to tell you to wake up, that you agreed to this. And they're trying, it's yourself that's your higher self that's talking to your spirit guide. And they're trying to get you that you are part, that this is an agreement you made. This is not random event.
So what are some tools to wake up other than meditating and asking to be woken up? You know what I mean? It's like, mushrooms. I mean, what do you think? It's all, everything happens in exactly the right time that it's supposed to happen in, or are we supposed to be more active in waking ourselves up?
Yeah, that's a hard question. You got to go with your feeling. That I've found with the synchronicity things, you probably had that. When you get the synchronicities, you know you're on the right track. The meditation is a good thing, but it's slow. The psychedelics is very, very fast, but you have to know how to control it because, I mean, you can say you don't believe this is happening. You're going somewhere and it'll be as real as real. And you'll suddenly realize like, oh man, the world isn't exactly the way I thought it was. So there's positives and negatives to each method. You have to follow your inner feeling as to what it is. The meditation thing I've tried numerous times. I can have great meditations where I'm in the zone because I have an actual tool that tells me when I'm in the zone. I can be in the zone for the entire, I've never had an experience in meditating. I've never had any, but if I'm walking, I know that works for me and I know it. And so I use whatever modalities I have and realize that when the time is right, you'll be given it. And to keep I guess you keep the right intention that I just want to know and keep that you want to use it for positive. And because it sounds like you're getting stuff. We live in a Western world where we want everything yesterday. It's like, just drop off the free technology and get lost. I mean, just come on, and we always want more stuff. And we got to realize it's an eternity. You've got eternity to figure this thing out. Just go along. Don't worry about it. It's all going to work out. And quit worrying about, we got to solve this thing, because people will say, I want to get off the karmic wheel. I want to solve this thing. And it's like, what are you going to sit on a beach and drink Mai Tais for the next billion years? Like, come on. I mean, it's crazy. We're trying to escape. We're trying to collect more stuff. We've got, 2 cars and a big house, and kids are all doing well. And now we want some spiritual stuff. It's like spiritual capitalism. We need some more stuff. And we need some spiritual stuff now. And we got to get away from that, it's a plan. It goes on forever. It started forever and it goes on forever. And it's an experience. Enjoy the experience the way it is. And don't get wrapped up in having to get it all today or figure it out. When the time, as you said, as the time is right, you've got eternity to figure this thing out.
Yeah. Well, everything that you're saying rings true to me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you are one of the people I would say that people have to listen to, because you can tell. I mean, when I talked to you before, this person is talking to somebody. And the problem is that people ignore the people who are talking to somebody, and they want to do this thing. We want to measure, because we can't measure your experience. We're not going to do it. So we end up counting how many red ones and how many green ones there are, how fast they're moving. And I know from my own experiences back in 1975, it'll start as one object and turn into another object as it's coming. It can appear as whatever it wants, it can appear whatever being it wants. It is absolutely super powerful. It can do whatever it wants. And we sort of get sidetracked in, and it's hard. It's easy because you've got to make a living, you got to do stuff. And we sort of fall into the illusion, is the expression. You keep falling back into the illusion again, that these other things are important when they're really not important.
Right.
Anyway, anybody got anything else? Will.
Boss.
This is almost like the rabbit holes. We started we started the rabbit holes in Denver, or not in Denver, in Boulder. And that was the idea, that we just get, everybody goes down the rabbit hole, and we haven't had one. Maybe I'll have one. I'll send the link to Paul. We'll have another rabbit hole. And people like this come on, experiencers from around the world, and they have questions and they have stories to tell. And sometimes we'll have 70 people on there, and there's no agenda. It's just everybody just sort of talks and share experiences, and you realize you're not alone, that there are other people having the same experiences as you. And that's what people need, is they need the confirmation they're not crazy, and that they are supported. And that's what we try to do.
Grant, this is Ross. Grant,
Yeah.
anything that keeps you up at night?
Everything keeps you up at night. Everything.
Like,
my left brain, I'm very, I'm always trying to figure it out. So I'm getting this experience that Whitley Strieber gets, and that this being was doing to this woman. I'm wondering whether it's happening to me. I wake up between 3 and 4 o'clock every morning, without fail. I don't need an alarm clock, and I get up and I meditate. And last night, and you do the sensing exercise that Whitley Strieber does. And it's this idea that between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning is when you can best deal with situations in your spiritual life, at that period of the morning. Like Deepak Chopra gets up and meditates that time and stuff like that. So last night I did it, and I just couldn't shut my brain down. I just could not go back to sleep. My brain was going, and I had this idea about doing this and doing that. And that's the thing that haunts me, is when your left brain gets going and you can't shut it off. You can't quiet the mind, where it just takes over. You can't sleep. So I sleep in spurts now. And I think that's what it is. It's like I'm so desperate to figure this thing out and stuff, where the pattern is to actually relax. That'd be my biggest enemy, is the left brain. And that's what they told me in the field. They call me ego boy.
Is there anything, Grant, that you are personally looking forward to it in a near future?
Looking forward to. I would like to have the experience I had last week again. This experience where the spiritual experience, and then to feel unconditional love, this field, where you're in this field, to be lifted up into what can only be described as sort of total bliss, and one with the universe and all that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff I look forward to. I'm still into sort of the next thing. So I get my thing and I get excited. Like when I got this idea, they wanted me to do this book on talking to aliens. I get very, very excited. And that's what I think what kept me up last night. I was starting to think about this, where that's what I look forward to, because I'm a, if you know me, I don't really own anything. I don't really care about anything like that. I'm more into ideas. That's my main thing. Is that's what excites me of discovery, and almost like the idea of the Super Bowl, that I'm in this Super Bowl and I'm not doing enough. Too much is given, much is expected. Edgar Casey, knowledge not used is sin. That's the kind of stuff that drives me, that I realize I'm in this game and I'm trying to get to the next step. I'm trying to figure out the next thing. And I realize this is the biggest story of all times. I'm just so excited and so honored to be in it. Even some of my experience, I have this thing where I call it the gratitude, and it's weird. I call it the gratitude dude, and it keeps showing up. And it's like this feeling that comes over you. That is like a feeling. It's not something, it's not a rational analytical thing. It comes over you and you are the most grateful person that ever lived. And it's like a feeling. And it's like, how do they do this? It's like just weird. Where I'd be in experiences and I'm going like, what if the gratitude dude's going to show up? And sure enough, at the end, it's like the gratitude dude's here again. And this overwhelming feeling to me. And that's where I keep saying to people, like, I am the luckiest person in the world. Nobody is as lucky as I am. And it's this, and it's a feeling. It's just weird. Or where they can put you into this hell experience where you think it's going to go on forever, and you know it's not going to go on forever. You just got to surrender. But they don't let you figure that thing out. They make you think it's going to go on forever, and then finally you suddenly go like, "Oh, I got to give up here," and then boop, it goes away. So I'm always chasing the idea. That's the thing that's of value to me.
Thank you, very insightful.
And as I said, like I've always appreciated, like with Julia and the rabbit holes that we had, that Boulder's always been a special place to me, because it's a place where people recycle their food, and people are all going to meetings. Like when I go see Julia, and we're going to these meetings on the spiritual stuff, and it's like, what other places in the world is like this? It's like a totally different place in the world. There is no place like, I've been a lot of places. There's no place like Boulder, Colorado in terms of the level of consciousness that is there. I mean, everybody's driving bikes, and it's like almost like a different level of reality.
It is.
Well, Grant, you should come back to Boulder and we'll all do psychedelics together.
Yeah, that's I have never done it. I'll tell you, I've done 23 high dose sessions. I had never done anything like that. And when I did contact modalities, when I was finished it, I heard these glowing stories. I saw all the reports. I said, I'm going to try this. And then I sort of got one experience, two experiences, and they would give me these lessons. And the way I go into it is to say, okay, I'm here for a lesson. I don't want to see any dancing bears. I don't want to see Jesus. I don't want to see spirit guides. I don't want to see colors. I don't want to see structures. I just want a lesson. What do I need to know? And they have basically taken me to this thing where I don't get colors. I don't get anything and I'm thinking like, maybe I'm not even just doing this. Maybe this is all just, I'm getting like, I think I'm doing this and I'm not really doing it because it's so much different than any other experiences. And that's this idea, like whatever you need. And then maybe the answer to your question, when I go in, I just say, okay, I'm here. Whatever I need to know, tell me. I'm here for a lesson. So I called the book Breakthrough the Psilocybin School. I'm here. I'm not going to tell you what to do. And in fact, I would do things with doctors. I had a thing with one cardiologist told me, he said, you got something, man. You got congestive heart failure or whatever. And he said, what do you want to do? This, that, or this? Give me these options. I go, you're the doctor. Like, what are you asking me for? Like, what do you want me to say? And it's the idea is like the field, if you're in the field, you trust that the field knows what you need to do. So you have to have that humble approach. It's absolutely critical that you surrender and you go in humbly and say, I am here to learn. What do I need to know? Because we want to rush it. We want to say, okay, I want you to tell me this. I want you to tell me that. I got all these questions and stuff like that. And that becomes like, it's like almost the thing is like, you're almost waiting for the field to say, do you want coffee and pie with that order? You know, like we're sort of ordering the field around instead of just being humble, going in the field and getting what you need to learn. They will give you what you need.
Well, there is the wisdom right there. Thank you.
So, Grant, I'm going to humbly say I'm going to take off for the evening. It's been a wonderful 3 hours. You guys can continue, but I'm leaving. Thanks so much. Okay.
What's for dinner?
We just had a whole bunch of oranges.
Oranges. Come on. Okay, Paul, thanks for the invite. I guess we'll shut her down here. I'm going to go for a walk and get some inspiration.
Thanks. Thanks, Grant. Thanks,
Beautiful.
Grant. This is wonderful. Wonderful.
Boulder is one of my favorite places in maybe my